The woman was losing more and more control of herself. The moment her husband fell asleep, she wanted to push Kason down. Just thinking about what would happen next made a faint blush spread across Elena's face. If her husband had not refused to touch her for so long, she would never have resorted to this. According to the adult textbook, step 1 was to lift the blanket. Step 2, before her husband fully woke up, quickly climb on top of him. Good, she was almost there. Thinking back to her previous operation, Elena had been wrapped up like a silkworm cocoon before she could even touch her husband. Just as she leaned down to kiss him, her husband suddenly woke from his sleep, and the scene before his eyes once again shattered Kason's worldview. He truly could not understand why his wife was so obsessed with his body. On their wedding night, he had clearly told her that although they were husband and wife, he would not lay a finger on her. And now, to stop his wife's teasing, Kason grabbed the bedsheet beneath him. Amid a series of tearing sounds, he once again wrapped the woman up like a cocoon. Afterward, like coaxing a tiny baby, he gently patted Elena's shoulder and lulled her to sleep. But faced with her husband's complete indifference, Elena felt utterly unconvinced. Who wanted to sleep with him so innocently? Next time, no matter what, she would remove the bedsheets first. As if he had seen through her thoughts, Kason gently told his wife, "Don't waste your effort from now on. Even without bedsheets, I can still use the curtains." Elena was completely stunned. But even so, she would not give up easily, though Elena was unwilling to just sleep obediently like this. The man's embrace was full of security, making her feel a comfort she had never known before. And looking at those firm muscles, the woman was practically drooling. "I heard sleeping in clothes is bad for blood circulation. For your health, you should take them off." After saying this, Elena even asked her husband to untie her, promising she would not touch him. However, no matter how solemnly the woman swore, her husband was convinced her motives were impure. After saying goodnight, he fell sound asleep. When Elena woke the next day, she felt utterly defeated. As the youngest daughter of a count's family, she was at the very least a beautiful and charming noble lady. In terms of money, her family was wealthy enough to dominate the region. In terms of affection, her eldest sister and second brother often argued endlessly over her. With such excellent conditions, what man would not fall for her? Yet this husband just had no interest in her. In truth, it was not as if Elena had to marry this man. It was just that some time ago, she met an old lady on the street. Out of sympathy, she bought the woman some food. It was precisely this kind act that caused her to have a strange dream that very night. In the dream, 20 years later, the kingdom had been ravaged by monsters until only ruins remained. Humans were slaughtered without restraint. Even she herself did not escape that catastrophe. Although it was only a nightmare, Elena firmly believed it was the future she had seen. So she went to find that old lady again and confessed everything she had seen in the dream. Hearing this, the old lady told the girl everything. "The reason I chose you is because I hope you can change the tragedy that will happen 20 years from now. And the only way to resolve that catastrophe is for the child of the monster Duke to become the hero who saves the world. But there is one important condition. The child that is born must be the crystallization of the parents' love. Otherwise, nothing in the future can be changed." After saying this, she disappeared before the girl. To stop the tragedy from happening, Elena took the initiative to find the monster Duke's fiancé, wanting to marry into the Duke's mansion in her place. The reason she did this was because she understood that the woman did not want to marry there. Because the rumored monster Duke, Kason, not only had black markings covering his face from birth, but his entire family had died one after another. Everyone said he'd been cursed by demons, so no girl was willing to marry him. But Elena did not think that way. How could someone cursed by demons father a child who would become a hero? Sure enough, when she so blatantly replaced the fiancé was not angry at all. Instead, she excitedly informed her relatives. When Elena's father learned of this, he found it strange. His daughter had been shouting, "Long live being single," just yesterday. How had she suddenly decided to marry today? And her partner was even the rumored monster Duke. Although this marriage would bring great benefits to the family, her father cared more about his daughter's happiness. To keep her father from worrying, Elena began her Oscar-winning performance. In the end, through the woman's efforts, the engagement was settled. On the day of the wedding, Elena was extremely nervous. The instant the door to her future opened, she finally saw the rumored monster Duke. The man's clear blue eyes, drew Elena's gaze, as if she had been enchanted by magic. Only when her cousin quietly reminded her did the woman snap back to her senses. As the two walked hand in hand into the wedding hall, Elena could not help sneaking glances at him again. Did he hear what she said earlier? What if he had heard? Yet the reason the woman had just regained was once again captured by the man. Those warm, large hands, that height that gave such a sense of security, and those muscles that were practically bursting out. Elena kept reminding herself that all of this was to save the world. She was not doing it out of lust. With the woman's heart pounding wildly, the two finally completed their vows. As soon as the wedding ended, her family members came one after another to say goodbye to Elena. Even her husband's former fiancée tearfully said she could not bear for the girl to leave. But no matter how reluctant they were, they still had to part. As soon as she boarded the carriage to the Duke's territory, Elena could not help secretly peeking at her husband. Her eyes never left that place. Perhaps sensing his wife's burning gaze, Kaysen slowly said, "You don't need to worry. I won't take off my mask in the carriage. But that's not why I'm staring at you." The man had not expected the woman to be so direct. For a moment, he did not know how to respond. After finally arriving at the Duke's castle, the first thing Elena did was wash herself until fragrant, then prepare for the wedding night she had longed for. But when the moment truly arrived, she grew so nervous that her eyes darted around. Would it hurt? It would definitely hurt, right? She heard the first time always hurt. Just then, the strong liquor on the table caught Elena's attention. They said alcohol gave cowards courage. Without thinking, the woman downed a whole bottle. After entering, she plopped onto the bed, encouraging herself as if marching to her death. Wasn't it just that one thing? As long as she endured the first time, it would be fine. Yet on her wedding night, she was actually left alone all night. She did not even see a hair of her husband. Realizing she had been neglected, Elena was just about to go find her husband and demand an explanation when she learned from a maid that the territory had suddenly been attacked by monsters last night. For the safety of the commoners, His Grace had led men overnight to suppress them and only returned this morning. After hearing this, Elena breathed a sigh of relief. So her husband had not intentionally neglected her. Since that was the case, as the Duchess, she also had to shoulder responsibility and help her husband manage everything in the mansion. From what Elena knew, although this land was fertile and commerce was prosperous, monsters often came down from the mountains and harmed the people, so it was not suitable for living. But ever since her husband took over the territory, he personally led the Night Order up the mountain and carried out a sweeping purge of the monsters. Only then did the territory regain its long-lost peace. At the time, he had only been a 16-year-old boy. It was clearly a great achievement that should have been praised by the world. Yet because of it, everyone said he was an existence even more terrifying than monsters. Thinking of this, Elena wanted to nourish her husband properly. But the most important thing right now was to help her husband manage the castle. Thus, after 7 days and 7 nights of Elena's tireless efforts, she finally learned everything about the place, and this utterly exhausted her. During the day, she had to learn all the major and minor affairs of the castle. At night, she had to stay up waiting for her husband to favor her. Elena lay on the bed, forcing her eyes wide open. She swore that tonight, no matter what, she could not fall asleep halfway. But dreams were beautiful, and reality was cruel. In the end, she was left alone again. What exactly had gone wrong? Aside from the wedding day, she had not seen her husband again. At first, Elena thought the man must simply be too busy. But a whole week had passed, and she had not even seen his shadow. This was far too ridiculous. She could not bear it anymore. She prepared to find her husband and ask him clearly. But at that moment, Elena noticed 2 maids in the corner staring at her. Their guilty-looking expressions left Elena completely confused. But right now, she wanted to know even more. Why she had not seen His Grace lately. However, the maid's next words struck Elena like lightning. That's right. It was all thanks to us. We told His Grace that you were unwell. And from now on, we will also tell His Grace not to come see you. Elena could not listen any longer. So the wedding night she had been longing for had been blocked by these 2 self-righteous fools. Was it because he was the monster duke that they thought no woman could possibly like him? For some reason, seeing her husband being treated like this by the servants made the woman feel worse than if she had been insulted herself. So Elena summoned the head maid and the butler. In front of everyone, she made an example of them. After dealing with the two infuriating fools, Elena kicked open the door to her husband's office. Seeing her husband without his mask for the first time, she was actually mesmerized. What demonic pattern? Wasn't this an incredibly expensive leopard print tattoo? As soon as she came before her husband, she could not help reaching out to touch it. Faced with his wife's sudden action, Kason gradually went from panic to enjoyment. From childhood until now, this was the first time anyone had touched him like this. The feeling was unfamiliar, but he was deeply fascinated by it. The woman became even bolder. This guy's skin was far too soft and smooth. It felt even better than her own. Who knew how long she touched him before Elena finally came back to herself? Now was not the time for this. She placed both hands on her hips, adopting the air of a domineering lady boss, and told her husband, "I do not have the habit of sleeping separately from my husband, so tonight you must hurry over." After saying this, Elena slipped away in a flash. Returning to her room, the moment she thought of her husband's delicate skin, the woman felt her mouth go dry. After gulping down a large cup of cold tea, she quickly went to take a pedal bath. And all of this was so that her husband could have the ultimate experience. That night, Elena sat nervously on the bed and waited. As a beam of light shone onto her face, the husband she had been longing for day and night finally arrived. From the moment the man entered the room, her gaze kept wandering over her husband's body. Elena kept hypnotizing herself. "I am doing this to save the world. It is definitely not because I covet his body." But the more she thought this, the more fiercely her heart beat. Seeing his wife's agitation, her husband could not help confirming, "Do you really want to sleep together with me?" "Of course. Aren't we husband and wife? If I don't sleep with my husband, who should I sleep with?" His wife's firmness stunned Kason on the spot. But soon, he returned to his usual expression and turned to extinguish the lamp. Elena was both confused and expectant about her husband's actions. Did he like it dark? But why was he not taking off his clothes before turning out the light? Or did he want her to undress him herself? Elena's mind was full of questions. Before she could think it through, she saw her husband had already lain down. The woman hurriedly lay down as well. Although she had no experience in this area, according to novels, as long as a girl lay down, embarrassing things would happen. Elena closed her eyes and waited quietly. But after waiting for a long time, she opened her eyes and found her husband sleeping like a log. The woman could hardly believe it. It was their first time sharing a room, and she was so beautiful. Yet her husband had fallen asleep. Although Elena felt very depressed, looking at the man beside her gave her an inexplicable sense of peace. So after a short while, she also fell asleep. When the morning sunlight spilled into the room, her husband's remaining body warmth had not yet faded. Elena touched the spot. This was the first time since coming to the territory that she had slept so peacefully, but she truly could not understand why her husband remained unmoved by her. Could he be worried that after coming to this place, she was not mentally prepared, so he wanted to give her time to adjust? But Elena did not need that at all. So tonight, she was determined to push her husband down. The awaited night arrived once more. Elena stared at her husband with shining eyes. "Are you tired today?" Hearing this, Elena shook her head like a rattle drum. "Wonderful. It seems you slept very well last night." Then tonight, the thrilling moment was finally about to come. The woman waited excitedly for her husband's next move. Who knew that after wishing his wife a good sleep tonight as well, her husband would simply crawl into bed on his own? A spring night was worth 1,000 gold. Elena felt it was a terrible pity, but thinking that they still had many days ahead, there was no need to rush. But on the second day, the third day, the fourth day, that man actually only knew how to sleep every day. Elena was going mad. Fortunately, just now, she had chugged several bottles of liquor. So now, she had to make things clear with the man. "Are we going to keep doing nothing forever? You do not need to worry about that. Although you are my wife, I will not lay a finger on you." After hearing her husband's words, Elena briefly thought something was wrong with her ears. Although the books did not describe the process of having children in detail, she at least knew one thing. If a married couple wanted to spend a wonderful night together, they had to take off their clothes. And at this moment, Elena's last bit of reason was completely numbed by alcohol. Then she transformed into a wrestling athlete and climbed onto her husband. She began frantically tugging at the man's clothes. "I told you to take off your clothes. Did you hear me?" What do you mean by refusing to take them off? Can you even do it or not? Kason was stunned. This was his first time seeing a woman so desperate for him. So he grabbed the bedsheet and wrapped his wife up. No matter how the woman struggled or ranted, he did not lose control. Only the hands holding his wife's body grew tighter and tighter. Stop moving around. It is not that I cannot do it. It is that our hearts have not truly accepted each other yet. So hurry and sleep. After saying this, he patted his wife's shoulder while humming a lullaby, patiently coaxing her to sleep. Although Elena was unwilling, the man's soothing seemed to have magic. When Kason noticed there was no more movement below him and looked down again, he froze for an instant. She truly was as beautiful as a poem and a painting. Her pale hair and snow-white skin reflected each other, as pure and flawless as a blooming lily. And how could someone cursed by demons like him defile such purity? That night, nothing happened. But when the woman woke up, she had lost all will to live. However bold she had been last night, that was how ashamed she felt now. She might as well drown herself in the wash basin and end it all. But who could drown in face-washing water? After going crazy all morning, Elena began to doubt her own beauty. She had already taken such initiative. Why had that man shown no reaction at all? She began asking the maid beside her for confirmation. Am I not pretty? Tell me the truth. I won't get angry. I'm just curious, so if I wanted to ask you. The maid was baffled by the question. If Madam's looks counted as not pretty, then should the rest of them go live in seclusion in the mountains? Then the maid swore to Madam with her hand on her heart. Madam, your appearance is simply graceful, devastatingly beautiful, a national treasure, enough to sink fish and make geese fall, shame the moon and flowers, incomparably elegant, a feast for the eyes, and exquisitely charming. In this world, there is no man who would think you are not beautiful. Elena blushed at the praise. She secretly remembered this maid. In the future, she would surely achieve great things. The maid's words also encouraged Elena. Since the problem was not with herself, then the problem had to be with her husband. Still, the maid was right. After all, people often praise her like this. But that proved another point. She was not the one with a problem. Then there was nothing to fear. She had to make her husband give her an explanation. She immediately ordered the maid to tell her husband that regardless of whether he was busy, he had to have lunch with her today. Elena refused to believe that a fair-skinned, beautiful little wife like her could not win over her husband. But imagination was beautiful, while reality was harsh. She had not expected her husband's very first words upon meeting her to make her blush bright red. Were you serious last night when you wanted to do that with me? In order to spend the night with her husband, the girl had drunk a huge amount of red wine and used the alcohol to force her husband into intimacy. Yet the man showed not the slightest interest and merely held her as they slept through the night. This left Elena extremely speechless. Fortunately, the more the girl fought, the braver she became. She confidently went to find her husband. Good grief, his eyes were only on the food. She had planned to sit closer to that guy, but thinking of that shameful scene, she unconsciously sat dozens of meters away from him. This made her already wooden husband even harder to conquer. Just as Elena was feeling depressed, the man spoke first. How was your health? The girl gently touched her dark-tinted white hair. I am fine. Thank you for worrying about me. Elena secretly glanced at him, unable to believe this guy was actually glowing. The scene from last night appeared in her mind. Although she had drunk too much at the time, she still vaguely remembered his sleeping face, his embrace full of security, and the strong arms that pulled her into his chest. For some reason, Elena suddenly felt unbearably hot. Just as she was lost in fantasy, her husband had already dismissed all the servants. Only when the door closed did the girl finally come back to herself. Were you serious last night when you wanted to do that with me? Hearing this, Elena's face instantly turned red. She had not expected her husband to ask so directly. Yes, although she had borrowed some courage from alcohol, those were indeed her true feelings. They had already been married for a month, yet the two still had not become husband and wife in truth. And she was not a patient person. How much longer do you want me to wait? As soon as the words left her mouth, Elena felt a little regretful. What kind of girl forced a man to do that with her? Kason was silent for a moment. Do you want to carry on your family line? As far as I know, you have an elder sister and an elder brother. Is there something wrong with them? Elena was startled by the question and hurriedly denied it. This made her husband even more confused. Then, have you misunderstood our marriage agreement? Elena was furious. She knew the clauses did not include having children. But did he have to be so rigid about it? As if he feared she did not know they had a prenuptial agreement. Wasn't it normal for a married couple to sleep together? Why could this blockhead not understand? Although she did indeed have a special reason, she could not very well say that their child would become a hero and eventually kill the Demon King. Without evidence, if she said that aloud, she would be treated as a lunatic. Kaysen was silent for a long time, then apologized. I cannot satisfy you in this matter. Elena looked confused. Then she gradually became shocked. Do you hate me? Or do I have no charm in your eyes? The man hurriedly denied it. There are special reasons he could not explain. But aside from this matter, he was willing to agree to anything else. But this was the only thing Elena wanted. She simply wanted to have a child. However, since things had come to this point, forcing him further was useless. The girl decided to make a strategic retreat first. Not sleep together with him? Was he joking? That was not up to him. In any case, she just had to push him down. After all, when she got serious, even she feared herself. Elena was very confident. This time, she absolutely would not fail like last time. After studying for a full day and night, when a maid found her the next day, Elena was almost exhausted to death. But hard work paid off. She had already mastered all 108 positions. However, the intense drowsiness had left her unable to hold on. With a bang, her forehead slammed heavily onto the desk. Elena nearly died on the spot from the pain. It really hurt. It would not swell into a lump, would it? Touching her red, swollen forehead, she wondered what this even was. This was all that fool's fault. Since they were husband and wife, they should fulfill their marital duties. Suddenly, inspiration flashed through her mind as she remembered a lesson from an adult book. She immediately barged into her husband's office. With a large lump on her head, she said aggressively, "You have time right now, don't you?" The man did not speak, but his gaze was fixed firmly on the lump on her forehead. Elena was puzzled. What did this guy mean? She asked again. Only then did the man react. "I have time, as long as it is not about marital matters." Elena was truly about to die of anger. "You said you would agree to any request of mine, right? Then my first request, you cannot get angry because I came to find you out of nowhere. Second request, you cannot drive me out. Third request, I want to be alone here with you." Kaysen was extremely helpless, but seeing his wife's dejected expression and the lump on her forehead, he still waved his hand and dismissed all the servants. Elena revealed a satisfied smile. As the door closed, she threw caution to the wind and sat on her husband's desk. This was the new move she had learned, office temptation. Elena's fair feet swung back and forth. She believed she must look very feminine right now. After all, whenever she did this in the past, even her brother, who always bullied her, would agree to all sorts of unreasonable demands. Let's see how you resist this. The beast inside Elena roared wildly. However, the stunning beauty she thought she possessed turned into nothing but one big lump in her husband's eyes. Elena did not know she was making a fool of herself. At this moment, she was still feeling smug. Seeing her husband's dumbfounded expression, she thought the man had already been utterly bewitched by her, so she immediately made another request. "Praise me. For example, praise my appearance." Hearing this, the man took 3 steps back. He examined her from head to toe, yet after a long while, he still did not speak. Elena panicked. What did this guy mean? Did he think she was an idiot? After the two were silent for a long time, Kaysen finally spoke slowly. "You are very beautiful, especially your dark white hair." The girl blushed. The hand supporting her body accidentally slipped. Just as she was about to fall, her husband caught her in time. Then he placed her back on the desk. Looking at his handsome face so close to her, Elena's heart pounded wildly, and her cheeks seemed as if they would drip blood. He was so handsome today. Elena imagined what would happen next. But her husband merely placed her on the desk, then slowly said, "You are very beautiful, especially your silver hair. The color of your eyes is very striking, and your fingers." Before he finished, the man paused. He recalled the way his wife had gently touched him last time. Unexpectedly, that feeling had made him very comfortable. Elena raised her hand in confusion. He really did not know how to praise people. The two were silent for a long time. The girl suddenly realized that her foolish husband was actually very good-looking, especially those deep azure eyes. "You are so handsome." Her inner thoughts accidentally slipped out. What followed was her flushed face. Elena had always been very confident, but for some reason, only after meeting this man did she become like a different person. She would feel gloomy because of one sentence from him, and become overjoyed because of his praise. This change left her heart in turmoil. Perhaps she really had fallen a little in love with him. "From now on, you don't need to come to my room to sleep anymore." After saying this, she hurriedly ran out. Back at her bedroom, Elena's mind was still filled with random thoughts. She seemed to have gotten too excited just now. A maid knocked and came in, delivering the ointment the Duke had asked her to pass on. The girl did not understand why her husband had sent her ointment. With a miserable scream, Elena finally discovered the large lump on her forehead. Thinking of those seductive actions she had believed she was performing earlier, then thinking of the way the Duke had looked at her, she wanted the world to end. She had no face left to live. For the next few days, Elena did not even dare leave her room. Every day, aside from eating, she curled up in bed and applied ointment. A week had already passed, yet the girl still felt ashamed about what happened that day. Why had no one told her there was a lump on her head? Another week passed. Only then did the lump on Elena's head finally disappear. So under the cover of night, she secretly slipped out of her room. After enduring for so long, she could finally sleep with her husband again. Today, she had to push him down. In fact, she had always overlooked one problem: her husband's wariness of her. So she had deliberately ignored him for 2 weeks, pretending she had lost interest in having a child, all to make him lower his guard. So tonight, victory was certain. As the door was gently closed, Elena quietly walked to Kaysen's side. Looking at her husband's sleeping face, the woman was about to drool. She then lifted the blanket and carefully climbed on top of him. What happened afterward was that she was once again wrapped up like a dumpling by the man. Refer to the first episode. Meeting a husband like this made Elena truly furious. Should she simply lay all her cards on the table and directly tell him that their child would become the hero? Just as she was thinking this, a wasp suddenly appeared. Without a word, it raised its stinger and prepared to attack the girl. Elena was so frightened that she turned to run, but a stone tripped her. At that moment, a hand wrapped around her waist from behind. "Are you all right?" The man was very handsome, especially his smile. But for some reason, the hand resting on her body made her feel a chill of disgust. After expressing her thanks, the girl hurriedly left. Returning to her room, Elena still felt very concerned about that man. Only after asking a maid did she learn that he was actually the second young master of the Duke's family. He was usually gentle and kind to others, and was a prime marriage prospect many young ladies wanted to marry. But up until now, he remained single. This made Elena even more puzzled. Then what was that chill of disgust she had felt? The maid touched her arm, but she still did not feel what she had felt then. Could it be because of gender? Unconsciously, she thought of that fool again. With no other choice, she barged into the office with a serious face. She felt so embarrassed. She was clearly still angry at him, yet she had no choice but to come find him. "Can you lend me your hand?" Her husband looked puzzled, but still reached out his hand. Elena slowly placed her left hand into his palm and carefully stroked it up and down. The man was startled. Unexpectedly, he did not dislike it. Instead, those fair little hands were very soft and made him feel comfortable. Looking at the calluses on her husband's hand, Elena's mind began to wander again. He must look very handsome practicing swordsmanship, especially with those firm muscles. Thinking of this, Elena began drooling again. "Is there something wrong with my hand?" Hearing this, the girl suddenly snapped out of her fantasy. She began talking nonsense and making excuses. "Look, your hand is so big and thick. It is much bigger than mine. It feels very comfortable to touch." After hearing this, her husband panicked completely and hurriedly withdrew his hand. Elena then shyly stretched out her arm for him to touch. This strange request left the man somewhat at a loss. But seeing her expectant gaze, Kaysen still reached out and gently stroked her arm. As Elena felt it, she directed him a little lower, a little lower. "Use a bit more strength." After fussing for a long time, She still could not find the feeling she had when that other man touched her. She was about to keep trying, but Kaysen suddenly dodged aside. Elena grew angry just looking at him. What was there to be embarrassed about? He had clearly held her while sleeping for several nights already. She quietly muttered, "Thank you," then turned and left. Only after the door closed did the man slowly lift his eyes. He truly could not understand why this woman always wanted to sleep with him. He could no longer remember how many times it had happened. Every time he woke in the middle of the night, she would always be sitting on top of him, and her face would still wear a strange expression. She truly did not know what she should do with him. In truth, Elena was still very confident in herself, especially when it came to the herbs that had appeared recently. The blonde man had not only saved her, he had also shown her obvious affection. As expected, "I really am beautiful." But she always felt that man was sinister. And it was not just her. The maids in the mansion felt the same way. As long as they came into contact with him, they could not help breaking out in a cold sweat. Perhaps this was the warning from a woman's sixth sense, telling her to hurry and nod. Hearing this, Elena was stunned for a moment. After all, she was the Duchess. If the blonde man had secretly tampered with the herbs, the Duke's mansion would suffer a huge loss. So she decided to investigate that man, prevent losses in the household, and protect her husband's fertility. That way, her husband would feel grateful, and then she could have children with him. Full of confidence, Elena began to act. But after investigating openly and secretly for 2 days, she discovered that the blonde man was not only pleasant to talk to, but also very gentlemanly in his speech. He was also extremely patient. No matter how she looked at him, he did not seem like a criminal. This troubled Elena greatly. Could it all have been a misunderstanding? How about we go for a walk after dinner? The girl agreed at once. In fact, she had always had a question. The blonde man personally delivered the herbs every time. Did he not find such a long journey troublesome? Hearing this, the man was slightly taken aback. Because herbs are necessities for everyone. Men, women, old, and young can all use them to ease pain and even save lives. So, delivering herbs gives me a sense of mission. Is that laughable? Hearing the blonde man's words, the girl only wanted to slap herself twice. How could such a kind person possibly be a criminal? A woman's sixth sense really was just an illusion. It is not laughable at all, Elena said with a serious expression. It is truly wonderful to persist in doing something so meaningful. Just then, a familiar scene happened again. A wasp suddenly appeared, frightening Elena so badly that she stumbled. The blonde man once again held her in his arms, while his hand touched the girl's shoulder. That cold, eerie feeling appeared again as expected. Elena was utterly speechless. Could there be something wrong with this guy? After returning to her room, the maid group found a suspicious point. Every time the blonde man came here, a maid would resign from supplying herbs. Over the years, the number of resignations had increased. Moreover, all those maids were from other places. Those who had more contact with them noticed something strange. They looked very unwell, often wretched, and would mutter to themselves, "Impossible." After learning the situation, Elena formed an even bigger plan in her heart. So she took a risk and knocked on the man's door with strong liquor in hand. "I have many troubles I want to talk about. Could you drink with me for a bit?" The blonde man was startled, but he still invited her into the room like a gentleman, to create a dim, ambiguous atmosphere. The first thing Elena did after entering was close the curtains, then fill both their glasses. "My worries are somewhat difficult to speak of. You are the only outsider here, so I wanted to confide in you." Hearing this, the man solemnly promised that he would keep everything that happened today strictly confidential. As the two exchanged cup after cup, the blonde man soon became tipsy. Seeing him in this state, Elena was extremely excited. Through gradual coaxing, she finally learned the truth. It turned out the blonde man had made a kind of herb that allowed women to become pregnant even without being intimate with the opposite sex. The medicine had already been verified on the maids. Hearing this, Elena stood frozen in shock. At this moment, she finally understood why. Those maids vomited and why they kept repeating, "Impossible." The real reason was that they had become pregnant despite never having known a man. The blonde man swirled the wine glass in his hand. "You must very much want to give birth to an heir to inherit the dukedom. But you also do not want to carry a monster's child, right?" He could actually understand that feeling, because when he was young, his father had an affair and abandoned him and his mother. From then on, his originally gentle and kind mother suddenly became irritable and violent. She even resented her son, who carried his father's blood. Even before her death, she was still constantly cursing him. So from that time on, the blonde man decided that he would prevent people like him from being born, being able to carry a child with only your own blood. Is that not the lifelong wish of you women? Hearing this, Elena broke out in a cold sweat. This guy's actions were no longer just ordinary crimes. He was a complete and utter pervert. Elena was somewhat frightened, but she still forced herself to stand up calmly. The evidence was in hand, and she no longer wanted to stay here. Just as she was about to leave, the blonde man suddenly grabbed her hand. "You're clearly very interested in me. Do you still plan to leave just like this?" Hearing this, Elena froze. Suppressing her nausea, she said, "You have had too much to drink." The blonde man gently rubbed her fair little hand. "When you were with me these past few days, I could feel it. You were always looking at me with eyes full of affection. So do not leave tonight. Having a child with that monster duke must be painful, right? Why not be with me? When the time comes, our child can inherit his title. As long as we are careful, he will not notice." As he spoke, he picked up a bottle of aphrodisiac and drank it without another word. Then he slowly moved closer to the woman. "From the first time I saw you, I thought a beauty like you was wasted on that monster." Hearing the word monster again, Elena was furious. The blonde man was still saying provocative things, not noticing the change in the woman at all. The next second, she kicked the man's little rod. "Who are you calling a monster? You just will not stop, will you? You scumbag. You even dare covet your sister-in-law. And he is not a monster. He is my husband." As she shouted, she beat the man wildly. After the blonde man recovered from the pain, he grabbed Elena's little hand tightly. He forcefully pulled her into his arms. "Today, I will make you carry my child." Just then, the door was kicked open. A maid led a group of soldiers rushing in. Only at this moment did Elena recover from her terror. Fortunately, she had arranged with the maid in advance that after 1 hour, if she still had not come out, the maid should immediately bring people to save her. Otherwise, the consequences would truly have been unimaginable. Although the blonde man was restrained, he denied all the accusations. He insisted that he had only said he experimented on maids, but never said they were maids of the Duke's mansion. He also demanded to be released immediately, saying he could let the matter go. Hearing this, Elena's mind went blank. She had been careless. She had not expected the blonde man to be this shameless. Just as she was about to refute him, Kaysen suddenly spoke. "Lock him in the dungeon. If anything happened, he would take full responsibility." Elena looked up at her husband. He did not doubt her, nor did he blame her recklessness. Instead, he trusted her unconditionally. For some reason, an indescribable warmth filled the woman's heart. In only one night, her husband displayed his outstanding ability and iron-blooded methods. The maid also sorted out the entire sequence of events for Elena. It turned out the blonde man did not have any medicine that could make people pregnant. In order to frame the monster Duke as an ominous, cursed person, he had bribed the doctor of the Duke's mansion, making the doctor diagnose the maids as pregnant during examinations. This way, he could use public opinion to drive Kaysen from a dukedom. As soon as she heard this, Elena was so angry that she could not help slamming the table. She had not expected that behind such a small matter, there was actually such a huge conspiracy. Fortunately, that doctor had already been caught, and her husband had chopped off his limbs. With the doctor's testimony, the blonde man was also about to face his judgment. The matter had come to an end. Elena recalled the details she had missed, which her husband had discovered at once. This showed that he was perceptive, not a dull person. Since that was the case, Elena decided to be bold one more time. Immediately, she pressed her husband against the wall, gradually moving closer to him in the night. "I want to ask you a question. Is the reason you will not do that with me because you are afraid the curse on your body will spread to me?" Hearing this, Kaysen remained silent for a long while without speaking. Elena's gaze held a trace of determination. If her husband nodded, she would not hesitate to sleep with him right then and there. She did not know why, but an indescribable bitterness filled the girl's heart. She really wanted to tell her husband, that she was not afraid of those rumors, much less any curse. She only wanted to give birth to his child and then live happily with him for the rest of their lives. But when the words reached her lips, she could not say them no matter what. After who knew how long, Kaysen slowly uttered 2 words. It is not. Hearing this, Elena repeatedly confirmed it with the man. After receiving a definite answer, the girl let out a long breath. Since it was not for such a strange reason, then he must have some hardship that was difficult to speak of. I will wait for you. As for why exactly you will not do that with me, I will not keep asking. In any case, you will not tell me. But I am your wife. I hope you will not make me wait too long. After speaking, Elena was about to push the door open and leave. But Kaysen suddenly grabbed her hand. Madam, may I see your arm? Hearing this, the girl became uneasy. She knew what her husband wanted to see and hurriedly changed the subject. The man immediately saw that something was wrong. With eyes full of heartache, he asked again, "Let me see your arm, all right?" Elena froze. This was the first time she had seen her husband with such an expression. Her arm unconsciously stretched out before him. The man gently lifted her sleeve, revealing a large bruise. It was the mark left when the blonde man had forced her to stay. Kaysen looked at it for a long time, but the girl suddenly pulled her hand back, mumbling, "How did he know I was hurt?" The man looked straight at her, inevitably somewhat annoyed in his heart. Was it worth taking such a huge risk just for that matter? Do you know you nearly lost your innocence? Elena said nothing, but her heart was very unconvinced. She had only wanted to expose the blonde man's evil deeds and keep her husband from being harmed. The more she thought about it, the more wrong she felt, and tears unconsciously welled in her eyes. She roared hoarsely, "I thought that if I made a great contribution, I could do that with you." As soon as these words came out, Kaysen was completely stunned. After calming down, Elena was stunned too. Am I crazy? How could I say something like that? Since things had come to this, she decided to go all out. Come to my room tonight and apply medicine for me. She had thought her husband would never agree. Unexpectedly, he agreed without hesitation. That afternoon, the blonde man finally admitted to all his crimes. The number of victims had reached a full 40 people. As for his reason for doing such things, it was clearly no longer important. But looking at her husband's serious face, the woman could not help falling into a daze. It had already been 4 months since she married over. Her husband had gone from avoiding her at the very beginning to intimate contact now, although the two still had not truly become husband and wife. Elena still felt very happy. Her husband's mouth was stubborn, always saying he did not love her. But the woman could see that the door to his heart had long since opened for her. After all, every time an accident happened, he was always the first to stand in front of her. And every time she was hurt, he would always take care of her so carefully, just like now. The dim candlelight swayed in the wind. Looking at her husband, who was still endlessly scolding her, Elena smiled. Her smile was so happy. Let us have a child tonight. I will give you 100 babies. The girl counted on her fingers. If she gave birth to 5 children a year, 15 years in a row would be enough. Kaysen was amused by her silliness. Even pigs cannot give birth as well as you. Although he was teasing her, the man was actually very clear that his wife was only deliberately acting silly because she was afraid he would worry. But the next second, he regretted it because his wife actually began fantasizing that the children they gave birth to could save the world. Seeing this, Kaysen hurriedly turned off the lamp. This made Elena extremely excited. Before she could even speak, Kaysen rejected her with a vacant look. I have not even said anything yet. The woman rolled her eyes angrily. Then she turned her back to him. I will let you off for now today. Her plan to pounce on her husband failed again, so she decided to talk about something else. Elena had actually always been curious about how that pregnancy medicine was made. After all, creating life was almost a divine method. Kaysen said he was not clear either. He only knew it was the blood of some kind of beast. The two talked for who knew how long. But when the man turned his head, he found the girl's thin lips slightly opening and closing. She had clearly fallen asleep. The way she looked asleep was truly beautiful, making one unconsciously want to step forward and kiss her. Casting aside those stray thoughts, Kaysen tiptoed out. He secretly took out the recording magic bead containing the conversation between his wife and the blonde man. Listening to the dialogue inside, he could clearly sense that man's evil intentions. Let go of me. Suddenly, a furious roar came from within. Do not call me madam. The only person who can call me madam is my husband, Kaysen. He is not a monster. He is my husband," along with his wife's heart-rending cries. The man's eyes reddened unconsciously. He could no longer remember how many years it had been since he felt such warmth. Perhaps it was heaven's mercy, or perhaps it was destined. At this moment, all his grievances turned into starlight, filling the sky, slowly melting into this land. The next morning, at the noble's morning tea gathering, a noble woman in red revealed a shocking piece of news. It was said that while the blonde man was being escorted last night, a magical beast suddenly charged out halfway. Although that beast did not injure his mind, it focused its attacks on his lower body. It completely cut off his ability to reproduce. From now on, everyone could call him their sister. This news soon reached Elena's ears, and she was extremely happy. A bastard like that deserved to live in pain. She immediately hurried to find her husband, wanting to tell him the good news. But this time when they met, she clearly felt that her husband had changed. The scenery in the courtyard was beautiful, but Elena was very curious. Why had her husband suddenly invited her here? Did he have something to say to her? Since last night, she had noticed the man seemed weighed down by worries. At first, she thought it was only because he was busy with official duties and did not pay it any mind. But now, this heavy atmosphere inexplicably made her feel uncomfortable. "Madam, are you not afraid of staying with me?" These words left Elena completely confused. What is there to be afraid of? Could it be that you will do something to me here? Like my older brother, who teases me at every turn. But even if that happened, I would fight back. Hearing this, Kaysen's worldview was refreshed by his wife once again. So relatives could interact like this too. He said that he would never treat his wife that way. And even without him saying it, Elena knew her husband was not the kind of person to do such things. Besides, with the man's long and strong legs, how could he possibly do it? Speaking of which, it was a pity. She had never even touched those long legs. Immediately afterward, Elena's body acted one step ahead of her brain. Kaysen was also stunned. How could his wife put her hands on him without his permission? Sensing that something was wrong, Elena quickly returned to the main topic. "Since you will not tease me, why should I be afraid of staying with you? But everyone stays away from me because of the curse." Kaysen, who had suffered cold looks since childhood, had long since grown used to the gazes of the world. But his wife was different. He truly did not understand why. Elena grew anxious. "Do you think the markings on your body will spread to me? If that were really the case, I would actually think that was wonderful. Because if it can spread, that means it is an illness. And if it is an illness, there must be a way to treat it. There are just a few markings. What kind of curse is that?" His wife's words stirred waves deep within Kaysen's heart. His hand clenched into a fist, his knuckles visibly protruding. He decided to tell her the reason he had refused to touch his wife all this time. "In this castle, the place I like most is the Eastern Plain. When I was young, the gardener who managed that area especially loved slacking off, so the waist-high grass was always tangled together in disorder. Even if a child hid inside, no one could tell. Whenever I did not want my family to find me, I would hide in that grass. I do not think I'm truly cursed, nor that I will harm others. But whether this is a curse or something else, my child might be like me, born with these marks. So I never planned to leave descendants." If his wife had some special reason for wanting a child so badly, then Kaysen could only apologize. Only now did Elena realize that her husband had invited her here to say these things. He did not want children because his childhood had been unhappy. Although the man no longer continued the topic, sorrow brushed past like the wind, taking deep root in Elena's heart and soul. Elena began to feel extremely regretful about her past behavior. Without fully understanding her husband, she had blindly forced her own wishes onto him. She had also never considered their future child. Would the child inherit the markings in the future? What would their childhood be like? Elena had ignored all of these things. She had simply thought that as long as she gave birth to a child, the task of saving the world would be complete. But that child would not only be the hero, it would also be her and her husband's child. At the thought that she would become a mother, Elena could not suppress the excitement in her heart. That was right. She would do everything in her power and use all her love to protect her child. If anyone dare gossip, she would smash them with an 8-part combo. But the prerequisite was that she had to convince her husband. Suddenly, Elena noticed something. Her husband had suddenly opened his heart today. Did that mean he had begun to trust her? Could it be that her glorious deed of risking herself before had moved her husband? Perhaps Elena could wait until the trust between them deepened further, until Kaysen fully believed in her. Then she could tell her husband about that tragic future and even the method to change it. But plans could not keep up with changes. The next day, Elena learned from the butler that her husband was about to handle divorce procedures with her. For a moment, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. It turned out everything had been her own wishful thinking. Her husband told her his story not because he trusted her, but as his final gentleness toward her. Elena could not believe this fact. She found her husband and angrily questioned him. "Do you really want to divorce me? Are you going to drive me out of here? Are you tired of me?" Seeing his wife throw 3 questions at him as soon as she arrived and cry so aggrievedly, Kaysen's heart felt as though it had been pierced by a sharp blade. He hurriedly explained that it was not because of that. It was because he thought his wife so urgently wanted a child, but he could not give her one. So he guessed his wife might not want to maintain this marriage anymore. Rather than put the woman in a difficult position, it would be better for him to bring it up first. Having been hit where hurt by her husband's words, Elena instantly lost her confidence. What the man said was indeed true. She was very eager to have a child, but even so, she had never planned to divorce her husband. Even if she had to strangle him, she would tie the man to her side. So Elena firmly told her husband, "From now on, no matter the reason, I will never take the initiative to separate from you. Please be sure to remember this, because I will not change my mind." After expressing her position, Elena still wanted to confirm her husband's true thoughts again. "Do you really only want to divorce me because of this? Or are you dissatisfied with our married life? Yes, as my wife, you have truly treated me very well. Even so well that it is a bit excessive." Elena was very surprised by what her husband said. Aside from helping catch the blonde man last time, she did not seem to have done anything else for her husband. Although she did not quite understand, Elena decided to believe her husband's words. After warning her husband again that he was not allowed to divorce her, she returned to her room. What happened just now had truly been extremely dangerous. If they really divorced, what would she use to save the world and save herself? At this moment, Elena realized she could no longer blindly pursue having children. She should first make her husband fall in love with her, and then proceed to the next step. So the next morning, under her husband's gaze, Elena went to the territory where her close friend lived. When people from the same hometown meet, tears fill their eyes. Ever since they married, they had never had a proper gathering. Elena came this time, first to see her good friend Rosalind, and second to learn the rules of romance from her. Because her close friend had always been known as the Queen of Love. Every boyfriend she had ever had was utterly obsessed with her. When Rosalind learned that her friend could not even win over her own husband, she was so angry that she immediately began hellish training. Elena did not disappoint expectations either. In just a few days, she completed her studies and prepared to return home. Before leaving, the two even agreed to exchange letters and reports. When Elena returned to the Duke's mansion, she wanted to greet her husband, but the butler's panicked expression made her suspicious. After washing up briefly, Elena went to her husband's bedroom, who knew that the guards at the door would not allow her to enter. Unease rose in her heart. No matter what happened today, she had to see her husband. At that moment, the butler hurried over. He said his grace merely had a cold, and because he did not want to infect Madame, he had done this. But Elena felt that things were not so simple. She wanted to go in and care for her husband in the other person's place. However, the butler refused to give her that chance no matter what, since they would not respond to either soft or hard methods. Elena could only pretend to give up. After finally waiting until the butler left, Elena carried a lantern and stealthily ran beneath the balcony of her husband's room. She prepared to display her skill of a sow climbing a tree. Fortunately, she had been quite good at climbing trees as a child. In no time, she was about to successfully reach the top. If nothing unexpected happened, then something unexpected would definitely happen. Elena slipped, and her body instantly lost balance and fell backward. At the critical moment, a pair of large hands appeared in time and grabbed Elena. It turned out to be Kaysen. While the woman was still dazed, the man had already pulled his wife tightly into his arms. Her husband's handsome rescue of the beauty made Elena fall completely. After returning inside, her eyes did not even blink. She kept staring fixedly at her husband's broad frame. Seeing this, Kaysen used his eyes to signal his wife to be more reserved before speaking. What would you have done if I had not found you? Do you know you nearly fell and suffered serious injuries? How could it be that serious? Even if I were injured, it would be fine after treatment. As long as it can heal, broken arms and legs do not matter. What kind of twisted logic is that? As soon as he finished speaking, Kaysen realized his emotions were too intense. Even if he was worried, he should not speak so loudly to his wife. This was also the first time Elena had seen her husband so angry. She admitted she had been too reckless. She knew very well that compared with a wife he had only married 2 months ago, her husband definitely trusted the butler, who had lived with him for many years more. She simply could not stop worrying about her husband, so she thought of climbing through the window. If her husband was worried that she would get handsy, then Elena would promise the man that now she absolutely would not force her husband like before. But the more Elena spoke, the more she noticed her husband's expression was not right. Only after approaching did she discover that the man's forehead was burning like a fireball. Elena immediately had her sick husband lie down, and she looked around for something that could reduce his fever. Coincidentally, the butler brought cold water at that moment. Seeing Madame there, he was stunned at first. Then, seeing his Grace's tacitly approving gaze, he said nothing more and directly handed the things to Elena. If it was going to be like this, why had he stopped her earlier? Elena muttered about the butler's change in attitude while wiping down her husband, whose whole body was sweating nonstop. When she took off the man's shirt and saw the burn scar on his shoulder, Elena was very puzzled. This scar looked as if it had been there for more than 10 years. But was her husband not only 13 or 14 back then? How could he have been burned like this? With no time to think too deeply, Elena had her husband turn over. She was going to wipe his back. However, the scene before her made her hand freeze in midair. The dense burns shocked Elena. At the same time, undisguised worry and heartache surged in her heart. Kaysen saw everything clearly. He explained to his wife that these scars had all been burned by fire. Every time his mother was humiliated at a gathering because of him, she would tie him up after returning and burn his back with fire, because only when she saw him struggling in pain would his mother's mood become slightly better. As for his father, he only instructed her not to burn any obvious places, then stood by and ignored it. Kaysen did not remember how long this continued. He only remembered that he had still been very young the first time, and the last time was the day before his parents died. Hearing this, waves surged in Elena's heart. Words were like wind. At this moment, not a single word could come out of her throat. Her body also trembled nonstop. Such a tragic experience. Yet her husband spoke of it in such an indifferent tone. How great must his despair toward his parents have been? Although Elena desperately wanted to question them, at this moment she could do nothing. When the man turned his head and discovered his wife's tearful appearance, he hurriedly comforted her, saying that all of this was in the past. He no longer felt anything. The reason he had people guard the door was that he was afraid his wife would worry about him. Hearing this, Elena hurriedly wiped away her tears. She had her husband lie down again. The instant her fingers brushed over his skin, for her husband's sake, another reason to save the world appeared in the woman's heart. When Elena woke the next day, she learned from the maid that her husband was already working. She was still a little worried and was about to personally confirm it, but she happened to run into the butler. The butler sincerely apologized for his rudeness last night. After that, he told Madame about the things that had happened to young Master over the years. It turned out Kaysen's family had not died in an accident. It had been a murder. The culprit was Kaysen's younger brother. Relying on their parents' indulgence, the second young master, who had always had poor conduct, cruelly murdered a maid in the household. In order to protect their younger son, the Duke and Duchess used the reputation they had accumulated on ordinary days to claim to the outside world that the maid had disappeared by accident. Just when they thought the matter had already passed, the maid's older brother learned the true cause of his sister's death from the drunken second young master. Though he was clearly a murderer, he openly used the process of torturing that man's sister as drunken entertainment. Not long after, except for Kaysen, the Duke, the Duchess, and his younger brother all died in a carriage accident. The coachman driving the carriage at the time was precisely the maid's older brother. So this was not a simple accident, but the older brother avenging his younger sister. Hearing this, Elena could not help questioning the butler. Then why not make this truth public? It had caused her husband to bear the reputation of a demon who cursed his family to death. The butler helplessly shook his head and said that this had all been young master's decision, because he had always felt guilty for not telling his family the coachman's true identity in time. As for the butler, he believed he was the true mastermind in this matter, because everything the maid's older brother did had been secretly helped and guided by him. He did this because he believed that pair of parents, who were worse than beasts, were not worthy of living in this world at all. Kaysen knew all these things, but he still decided to shoulder everything alone. He became a demon everyone feared and avoided, only to protect the butler and the maid's older brother. Thinking of how her husband had grown up in such a terrible environment, yet still possessed a kind heart, Elena was deeply conquered by her husband. She comforted the butler, whose face was full of self-reproach, telling him to pull himself together. She would definitely use the facts to slap the faces of those rumor-mongers. So now, she had to complete one thing. However, after observing for several days, Elena was about to go mad. This man not only had no hobbies or interests whatsoever, even the rhythm of his life was just moving between 2 points. Every day, he was either practicing swordsmanship or holed up in his office working. If this continued, even by the time the world was destroyed, she and her husband would not be able to build a soccer team. Since the new techniques she had learned were not working, Elena simply moved on to the next plan, giving small gifts to win her husband's favor. But her close friend had warned that expensive gifts would only burden the other person. As for gifts full of sincerity, they were generally handmade items given to the other party. But Elena had a deep understanding of herself. She could embroider a rabbit into a brown bear. As someone terrible with her hands, she said she simply could not do it. After thinking it over, Elena decided to go out after all. She would personally choose a gift and bring it back. That would show the utmost sincerity. Who knew that as soon as she got off the carriage, she heard someone shout, "Catch the thief." Seeing this, the maid immediately stepped forward to protect her mistress. But the thief had no intention of stopping. Elena closed her eyes and left it to fate. However, the expected collision never happened. When Elena opened her eyes, she discovered that someone had subdued the thief, and that brave young man who acted for justice. Was he not the guard she had wanted to drive out of the Duke's mansion? It turned out that 10 days earlier, while Elena was learning about her husband's interests and hobbies, she accidentally heard Thomas speak disrespectfully about her husband. Not only that, he also denied the effort her husband usually put in. He believed that the reason his Grace's swordsmanship was extraordinary was all thanks to the markings on his face, talents bestowed by a demon. After hearing this, Elena used her identity as Duchess to teach him a lesson with the high heels on her feet. Afterward, Elena requested that her husband dismiss him. Unexpectedly, her husband explained on that guy's behalf. Although Thomas spoke without thinking, he was a very loyal knight. Seeing her husband so firm, Elena could only let the matter drop. She had not expected that in the blink of an eye, this guy would become her savior. Looking at the other party's still swollen right foot, Elena was very grateful to Thomas for saving her, but she would not apologize for what had happened before. If she heard such careless words again next time, Elena would still step in and teach them a lesson. She ended her conversation with Thomas. By the time she returned to the Duke's mansion, it was already night. Elena invited her husband to take a walk in the courtyard. Being able to walk side by side with her husband in such an intimate way, she could not help tightening her grip on the thing in her hand. Would her husband like this gift? With an anxious heart, Elena took out the pair of pink cuff links and personally put them on her husband. Then, under her husband's surprised gaze, Elena spoke from the heart. "You don't have any hobbies, but I want to add some color to your life. From now on, why don't we cultivate them little by little? First, let us decide that your favorite color is pink." At that very moment, without either of them realizing it, the seed of love in their hearts was quietly taking root. Before going to sleep, Elena stared at her husband's face and fell into deep thought. Since they had gotten married, aside from the matter of having a child, her husband seemed to have never refused any request of hers. At first, she had only wanted to save the world. But at some point, Elena had begun to care about everything related to her husband. Sometimes she would even blush, and her heart would race so much that she did not dare look straight at him. The man's sleeping face was beautiful, but he did not look comfortable. Every time, her husband slept fully dressed and perfectly neat. Elena sincerely hoped that one day, her husband could be more relaxed in front of her. That would make her even happier. The next day, when Elena woke up, she felt refreshed in both body and mind, because last night she had actually dreamed about her husband's family. In order to vent her husband's anger, she had spent the whole night punishing those bastards. She did not stop until they were half dead. Good news really did lift one's spirits. Elena hoped that next, when she tried to win her husband's heart, she would be just as unstoppable. At that moment, her husband told his wife another piece of good news. That fellow Incan had completely become a cripple and had been confined by his family to the estate for life. Just thinking about that scum's future days made Elena feel deeply satisfied. Even more unexpectedly, because of this incident, she became the idol of all the maids. But there was only one thing that gave her a headache. Even now, they still could not determine the ingredients of the pregnancy medicine. Back then, no matter how they had pressured Incan with words and actions, he had refused to reveal even the slightest clue. It was obvious that some shameful ingredient had to be involved. Once that ingredient was discovered, it would ruin a person's reputation completely. The moment this was brought up, the maid was so frightened that she failed to hold the plate steady, and it flew straight toward her mistress. Seeing this, Kaysen immediately blocked it with his hand for his wife. Elena was extremely worried, but fortunately, only his clothes had been dirted, and her husband's damned, muscular body instantly reminded Elena of something important. So she asked, "Have you been very busy lately? Could you spare one day for me?" Although Kaysen did not know what his wife wanted to do, he said he could make time for her at any moment. When Elena heard that, it was exactly what she wanted. She had not expected her husband to agree so quickly. Perhaps it was just her imagination, but for a moment, she felt that her husband seemed to have become gentler. But now is not the time for random thoughts. As soon as the meal ended, Elena went to the study. There, she found a letter sent by her close friend. It turned out to be asking about the progress between her and her husband. Elena carefully reviewed everything that had happened over the past few days. So far, it seemed there were no impressive achievements worth showing off. Fortunately, during the meal just now, her husband had agreed to go on a date with her. Otherwise, she might as well skip building feelings and directly challenge physical contact. Time was tight and the task was heavy. Elena handed the reply to the maid and instructed her to make sure it was delivered safely. After that was done, she began planning the location of their first date. The woman stayed up all night for 7 days and 7 nights, hesitating between boating and a festival, drawing one strategy plan after another. Before she knew it, she had stayed up another whole night. When the butler saw the scene before him, his dentures nearly fell out. The person involved, completely unaware, was dreaming of rowing the oars of love with her husband. Unable to keep watching, the butler immediately woke Madam up. Then, looking at the strategy maps scattered all over the floor, he told Madam that the young master's parents had been afraid of being mocked, so they had never allowed him to attend festivals since childhood. Those words instantly ignited Elena's anger. She immediately scrapped the original plan and changed it to attending the festival with her husband. To save time, Elena decided to hire a great mage to help shorten the journey to the festival. After all, her husband was rolling in money. Soon, through the butler's introduction, Elena found the famous Master Sidley. It was said that this mage had a noble status and was the master of the Empire's magical institution, the Black Tower. He was even beyond the Emperor's jurisdiction. Although he was a major figure with both strength and good looks, Elena thought there was something wrong with his brain. Why climb so high for no reason? It had made her shout with all her strength just now. Just as Sidley was about to introduce himself, Elena opened her mouth and said, "Black Tower Master." The man froze. That name did not match his aura at all. He absolutely did not want that form of address. She should call him Master or Master Sidley. Hearing this, Elena finally understood that the man's behavior at the beginning had all been for the sake of showing off. But she refused to call the Black Tower Master that. The title was accurate and easy to remember, so she would not change it. No matter how he tried to persuade her, it was useless, and Sidley was practically going mad. If she had not been the wife of his good brother, he would definitely have made the woman suffer a little. Since the woman refused to budge, he would retreat in order to advance. Sidley said he would not charge any money for this mission. Surely now she could respectfully call him Master. Who would have thought that after Elena heard the word free, she was only slightly excited. Then she waved generously and left, leaving the Black Tower Master alone in utter disarray. During dinner, Elena told her husband what had happened during the day. She was very curious how her husband could be close friends with the Black Tower Master. Their personalities were completely different. But her husband did not want to say much, so Elena stopped asking. Since her first date with her husband was coming soon, Elena lost sleep. She had originally planned to walk around until she was tired, then go to sleep. Unexpectedly, she happened to run into her husband's little fanboy. Seeing him train hard through the night just to catch up to her husband's toes, Elena enthusiastically gave him advice. If he felt that catching up to the toes was too lofty a goal, he could start with the soles of the feet first. After he had more or less achieved that, he could then make the toes his goal. And the woman's smug, proud wife attitude not only did not get her beaten, it even reignited the other person's fighting spirit. Just as Elena was feeling deeply gratified, a burst of noise caught her attention. It turned out that a drunken knight was dragging his colleague along, insisting on recounting her husband's feat of wiping out demon crows. Elena immediately became interested. At once, she appeared behind him like a ghost and said gloomily that she wanted to listen too. Although the knight nearly wet himself from being startled by Madame at first. It was rare to have such a loyal audience, so the man immediately began his splendid speech. And just like that, while continuously listening to legends about her husband, Elena welcomed her first date. This outfit was the one she had put the most effort into. The only pity was that masks had to be worn at the festival. Wouldn't that cover up all her makeup? Barbie, the muscular maid, immediately showered her mistress with praise. This move truly stunned the maids beside her. It seemed that if they wanted to be promoted, they also needed to practice their eloquence. Elena, standing nearby, was instantly filled with confidence and was just about to go find her husband. Kaysen had already appeared outside his wife's door in full dress. Her husband was truly handsome today, and he was even wearing the cuff links she had given him. She spun around happily and asked her husband if she was beautiful. Without the slightest hesitation, Kaysen replied, "You are very beautiful today." Receiving an answer so quickly made Elena a little surprised. Last time in the office, her husband had been so flustered that he could not say a single word. After the woman pressed him with questions, Elena finally learned that the previous time had been the first time her husband had ever praised someone, and she was also the first person her husband had found beautiful. In an instant, Elena's heart felt as if it had been filled with candy, incomparably sweet. She began to feel shy and turned around to tell her husband that they should go find the Black Tower Master and head to the festival now. Just as they were about to set out, her husband was suddenly called away by the butler. With no other choice, Kaysen could only leave for a while. When Elena saw the Black Tower Master, she became very guarded. She always felt that he had come to steal her man. Although her husband had said they were good brothers, she still felt that the other party's motives were not simple. Otherwise, why would the dignified master of the Mage Tower work for free? Actually, Sidley was also very surprised. He had known Kaysen for so long, but this was the first time he had seen his brother care so much about a girl. Just as Sidley was pondering this, Kaysen had already returned. Since everything was ready, Sidley immediately activated the teleportation magic and successfully sent the married couple to their destination. As the festival began, Elena and her husband also began their sweet stroll. On their first date, the sweetness level between the young couple shot straight through the roof. Tonight's starry sky was especially brilliant. Moonlight fell on the woman's face, making the man's heart grow a little restless. The affection hidden in Kaysen's eyes deepened. He reached out and tightly held his wife's hand, afraid that in this sea of people, he might lose the person he cherished most. Their body heat kept passing through their fingertips. Elena could not help blushing. But her straight-laced husband knew nothing about this. He did not know how to pamper his wife. He only knew that whatever his wife liked, he would be responsible for paying for. Before they knew it, the two of them had gained a full harvest. No matter how many things they held in their hands, those tightly clasped hands never let go. At that moment, a vendor not far away caught Elena's attention. If one successfully chopped through the wood, one could win a precious prize. Hearing this, the woman instantly became interested. The prize was not important. The key was that she wanted to see her husband's heroic bearing. So Elena dragged Kaysen into the contest. But after the dishonest vendor took the money, he saw the other party's strong build and schemed by taking out a fake sword. That way, what broke definitely would not be the wood, but that sword. He could even take the opportunity to demand compensation. Just as the vendor was feeling proud of his cleverness, a lion suddenly leaped out. Seeing this, Kaysen stepped onto the wooden stump in one swift motion, then flew toward the lion. He raised the sword and brought it down. In only an instant, the originally fierce lion had fallen to the ground, motionless. Once the crisis was resolved, Elena ran to her husband's side like a little fangirl. She knew that wherever her husband was, there definitely would not be any danger. Kaysen had not expected his wife to trust him so much. In fact, the moment he received the sword, he had realized something was wrong. If he had not gone all out, that fake sword would never have been able to kill the lion. Kaysen glanced at the vendor, who had already wet himself in fear, and decided not to pursue the matter because he did not want to ruin his wife's beautiful mood. Elena also thought they could flirt and play around like this all night. Little did she know that such a wonderful atmosphere would be ruined by an annoying man. She clearly did not know this man. Yet the annoying man brought his wife over and greeted Elena familiarly. This also exposed Kaysen's identity. Everyone instantly began pointing and whispering about her husband. Elena hurriedly pulled her husband away from that troublesome place. At first, she had been glad that no one had recognized her husband. That way, they could play without restraint. But judging from the current situation, it seemed everything had been ruined by that damn fellow. Although she wanted to create more memories with her husband, if word spread that her husband was here, they would definitely run into those bothersome nobles. So Elena suggested going home. Kaysen understood that his wife wanted to return so quickly because she was afraid he would be gossiped about. He said that he did not mind, but Elena could not accept it. If she saw anyone daring to openly gossip about her husband, she would pull a woman's hair, and if it was a man, she would make him unable to have descendants. Kaysen was instantly amused by his wife's words. As for that punishment for men, he did not approve of it. Elena blushed and stopped speaking, but in her heart, she was muttering that they should hurry home. At this moment, Kaysen discovered that a play was about to begin not far away. He suggested they go watch it, as long as they went inside to watch the performance. What his wife was worried about would not happen. Elena did not object. After all, their date was not over yet. However, from the opening of the play until the curtain fell, Elena remained in shock. That was because everything in the performance was exactly the same as the apocalypse in her dream. She found the local lord, wanting to meet the playwright of this performance, but the Baron told them that the script had been written by a young, wandering poet, and it would take some time to find the person. After receiving her husband's consent, Elena decided to stay and wait for news from the Baron. After the two checked in, Elena felt very sorry because her personal matter had taken up her husband's time. Kaysen told his wife not to mind such things. Compared with that, he was more worried about her. Ever since that performance began, the woman's complexion had not been good. Elena hesitated to speak. She could only explain that the script of that performance seemed to have been written by an old acquaintance of hers, which was why she had been so suspicious. Then Elena noticed a bottle of red wine on the table. She immediately filled a glass and decided to drink until she was drunk. But her husband did not seem to buy it. He stared at his wife with a vigilant expression. Only then did Elena realize that her past behavior had left a huge shadow over her husband. She solemnly swore that she would not do anything improper, then drank her glass first in one gulp. Kaysen panicked. In fact, he was not afraid that the woman would go wild after drinking. He had noticed that his wife was in a bad mood and simply did not want her to drown her sorrows in alcohol. but the delicate wife in his eyes was truly adorable, so Kaysen could only indulge her. However, the moment the red wine reached his lips, Kaysen sensed that something was wrong. The red wine his wife had drunk had been drugged, so he immediately stood up and opened the window in the room. Elena was very confused by this. Her husband patiently explained, "In a little while, you'll feel very hot." Elena did not believe him. She was dressed so lightly, so how could she be hot? It would be more likely for her to be cold. But as soon as she finished speaking, the woman realized that reality was not as she described. Her whole body was now burning up. Seeing this, Kaysen tightly closed his eyes and told his wife that something had been put in their red wine. Hearing this, Elena suddenly understood. It had to be the Baron's doing, but the drug was taking effect, and now her entire body was weak and powerless. Kaysen was heartbroken. He softly reminded his wife not to move suddenly, or the dizziness would become even stronger. However, when her husband's hand touched her skin, Elena immediately felt a wave of numbness. This feeling was no less intense than the dizziness. She realized that the man was very dangerous and had just tried to push her husband away, when her feet had already left the ground. Looking at the double bed drawing closer and closer, Elena could not help letting her imagination run wild. Had her dense husband finally awakened? But very quickly, Elena understood that she had thought too much. Her husband only wanted her to lie on the bed and rest. But she was very curious. How had the man known at once that something had been put in the wine? Kaysen said that he had drunk it before. Previously, because of official business, he had stayed in another territory for a few days. At that time, the lord there had given him drug wine. Because almost no medicine had any effect on him, it was only after some time that he realized he had been drugged. Elena became anxious. She questioned her husband about the woman that Lord had sent to his room in the end. Only after hearing her husband say that he had immediately sent the woman back did Elena relax and lie back down on the bed. But she had gotten up too quickly just now, and as soon as she lay down, Elena felt the world spin around her. Even so, it did not stop her from recording that lord in her death notebook. But the more she tried to divert her attention, the more that restless heart pounded wildly inside her. The touch from earlier was still fresh in her mind. Elena hurriedly moved her body away from the man. Seeing her husband's confused expression, the wife said righteously that she was protecting him. Only this way would her husband know that she had already turned over a new leaf. As time passed second by second, Elena's consciousness gradually faded. She grabbed her husband's sleeve, muttering again and again that it was so hot. Kaysen seemed to have predicted something. Immediately afterward, he went to the window and took down the curtains. When he returned to his wife's side, Elena began rolling around and making a fuss, saying it was simply too hot and that she had to take off her clothes. Kaysen understood that this was because of the drug's effects. This medicine would cause a person to lose judgment and even act as if drunk. He had just wanted to soothe his wife, but unexpectedly, the woman had already begun tugging at her own clothes. With no other choice, Kaysen could only wrap his wife up like a silkworm cocoon. This familiar scene helped Elena regain a bit of reason. Was her husband a ninja turtle? Even after things had developed to this point, the man could still endure it. Holding on to her final shred of hope, she begged her husband to release one of her arms. Kaysen really could not withstand his wife's pitiful appearance, so he untied the hand that was restraining the woman. Elena was extremely happy. She held her husband's hand and stopped making mischief like before. That was because intense drowsiness was eroding her consciousness. When Elena woke up the next day, she had no memory of what had happened after drinking last night. She did not even know how she had ended up on the bed. Her husband also kept silent about it. Early in the morning, the Baron also came to apologize. He explained that the medicine had originally been meant for him, but newly arrived maid had accidentally mixed things up, causing last night's misunderstanding. Elena did not know the other party had such a hobby, but since the man admitted his mistake sincerely and had also helped her find that wandering poet, she decided not to pursue the Baron's error. What Elena did not expect was that the poet was actually a young girl. Moreover, Will could also have prophetic dreams. Everything in the script was something she had seen in her prophetic dreams. The only pity was that Will's dreams were all fragmented scenes, and the contents were only things that would happen within the next few years. Elena wanted to keep in constant contact with Will. That was because, aside from herself, this young girl was the only person who knew the future. In the end, under Elena's insistence, the two signed a contract to continue exchanging letters until the world was destroyed. After handling these matters, Elena returned to the Duke's mansion and once again began her strategy to win his heart. In order to cultivate her husband's interests and hobbies, Elena decided to personally teach the man how to paint. Unlike handmade crafts, the woman had great confidence in her painting skills. Her first lesson was to demonstrate her own artistic ability. But for the final finishing touch, there was no blue pigment that could highlight the man's clear eyes. Elena thought for a moment and made a bold decision. After all, it was only a painting. The painter had the final say. Then she presented the work before her husband. Kaysen was a little surprised when he saw himself in the painting. In his impression, he did not seem to look like this. The person in the painting gave off a warm feeling. Was it because of the pink eyes? Elena hurriedly explained that because she did not have a suitable blue pigment, she had used the color she was most familiar with instead. Aside from the pupils and markings, the rest was practically copied and pasted. The woman looked at her proud work and suddenly felt inspired. The person in the painting looked like a mixture of both their genes. Would the child they had in the future look like this? But very quickly, Elena realized that she had spoken without thinking. Her husband was still very resistant to having children. She hurried to the canvas and announced that starting tomorrow, they would officially begin lessons twice a week. Kaysen did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the person in the painting, his thoughts surging. Those pink eyes seemed to be branded deep in his heart. For one instant, Kaysen truly wanted his wife to have something that belonged to the two of them. But a child's future was not something to gamble with. In the end, he strangled that impulse in the cradle. Still, Kaysen agreed to his wife's request and promised that he would properly learn painting from now on. So the next day, in order to be a competent teacher, Elena prepared to go out and buy some pigments. Most importantly, she had to portray her husband's ocean blue eyes. But after browsing for the entire morning, Elena still had not found any pigment she liked. She had originally planned to continue choosing after eating her fill. Unexpectedly, in a small alley, she saw a little girl being bullied. What shocked Elena even more was that the victim's name was actually someone she knew. So Elena ordered Thomas to immediately stop those two naughty children. Meanwhile, she came to the side of the little girl, Anna, the instant that familiar face entered her sight. A terrifying prophetic dream also surfaced in Elena's mind. Was this girl not the woman who, 20 years later, would sacrifice her life to help her avoid a monster's attack? Although in the end, Elena had not managed to escape death either. That couple had been willing to sacrifice themselves to save her in a crisis. Elena had always remembered that kindness. The woman had never expected that under such circumstances they would meet again. This time, let her be the one to protect the girl. But the culprits were two naughty children, so Elena could only frighten them a little. Sure enough, the two little ones burst into tears. They immediately apologized sincerely to Anna. Afterward, Elena took the girl's hand and bought her lots of food. At that moment, a little boy ran over, and Anna's call made Elena even more certain that the two children before her were the couple from her dream. But why were they in such a pitiful state? As soon as she returned to the Duke's mansion, Elena intended to sponsor Anna and Hans, who were living in poverty. But the butler told Madame that these two children were already children sponsored by the Duke's castle. Back then, when they moved to the Duke's territory, they had encountered monsters. Although His Grace had acted in time, the children's father had not been able to escape disaster. Later, in order to help the two children, His Grace decided to sponsor them. After hearing this, Elena realized that the reason the future Anna and Hans would save her was probably to repay her husband's kindness. Thinking of this, the woman went to find her husband. Seeing the man's focused appearance, an indescribable joy surged in Elena's heart. So there had already been some kind of bond between them long ago. At this moment, she really wanted to secretly pat the man's head to express her excitement. The next second, her hand had involuntarily landed on his head. Elena hurriedly withdrew her little hand in embarrassment and was just about to explain her behavior. But Kaysen raised his head and looked at his wife, gently telling the woman, "You do not actually need to do this secretly." He was a monster that everyone despised, yet she had rushed to marry him. She had even not hesitated to use herself as bait to help her husband root out the scum in the territory. Although they had ultimately succeeded in imprisoning that scum, this also triggered a series of potential hidden dangers. Ever since Incan was confined within the territory, the resentment in his heart had grown by the day. Clearly, he had been acting under his eldest sister's instructions, where he conducted experiments with the pregnancy medicine on the maids. After the matter was exposed, he had not revealed his eldest sister's involvement. What was hateful was that woman had now abandoned him completely. Unwilling to continue like this, Incan began threatening a servant, ordering him to sneak into the young lady's room and steal something. Once the item was in his hands, the man began his revenge plan. Meanwhile, Elena, unaware that danger was approaching, was preparing as usual to dress up and go out. Today, on a whim, she wanted to try on the earrings that the Black Tower Master had custom-made for her. It was said that these earrings could not only change into a suitable color according to her clothes, but even more impressively, they had location magic cast on them. As soon as Elena put them on, she discovered that the color of the earrings really changed. It was the first time she had seen something so magical, so Elena decided to wear them out. When she arrived on the street, she immediately went to look for Anna. Although her husband had already settled the girl's family properly, Elena still wanted to do something for her. At that moment, a woman suddenly rushed out and anxiously asked Elena's guard for help. It turned out that groups of monsters had appeared near the territory. Ordinary guards could not repel them at all. That was why the woman had asked the Duke's castle guards for help. After hearing this, Elena told Colin to hurry over and help, and that she would wait in place. Then Elena crouched down to comfort Anna, who had once lost her father because of monsters. But after thinking carefully, Elena felt that everything seemed far too coincidental. So she took off the earrings and told Anna to immediately deliver them to his grace. Just as she finished arranging these things, the woman sensed that behind her, there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at her. At the same time, a foul stench spread around her. She pinched her nose, trying to block out the smell. In the next second, the maid was knocked unconscious by two men in black. Looking closely, it was actually that scum Incan. With a sinister and eerie smile, he came to Elena's side. I do not want to harm innocent residents of the territory, and I do not want to be so rough with you either. If you know what is good for you, please obediently come with me. Elena looked at the maid unconscious in the man's arms. At this moment, she wished she could punch him, but she could not gamble with an innocent life. In the end, Elena could only comply. Along the way, Elena's mind raced rapidly. Had he not been imprisoned for life? Had he found some way to sneak out and cause all of this? Suddenly, a tavern by the road caught the woman's attention. She remembered that a guard had once mentioned to her that when mercenaries had no commissions, they generally gathered in taverns. Therefore, a method to save herself naturally formed in her mind. Then Elena pretended as if she was about to vomit. She demanded that the man immediately pull over and stop the carriage. She needed to get out and take care of it, or she would vomit in the carriage. As soon as the carriage stopped, Elena rushed down. While vomiting, she observed the situation around her. Incan, standing nearby, urged the woman to hurry up. Elena fiercely replied that if he wanted her to behave on the way, then he should buy something refreshing to ease her discomfort, such as something from that tavern. Incan was eager to end things quickly, so he simply took off his outer robe and threw it onto the woman, warning her not to play tricks. After buying the beer, she had to obediently return to the carriage. If she caused more trouble afterward, he would not be so easy to talk to. However, this was Elena's careful plan. In order to cry out for help smoothly, she found an excuse to bring the man into the tavern. Looking around, she discovered that it would be impossible for her to escape. Then only plan B remained. So Elena flung out her jeweled brooch, using her family name as guarantee, and shouted to all the mercenaries in the tavern, "Whoever can help me capture that wheat-haired man, I will give him 1,000 gold coins." The crowd behind her instantly boiled over. Hearing this, Incan finally understood. So when the woman said she wanted to drink beer, this had been her plan. Having been deceived again, his previous experience immediately surfaced in his mind. Incan instantly became furious. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had knocked the swarming mercenaries to the ground. Elena was stunned. How had this scum suddenly become so strong? Worry inevitably rose in her heart. Actually, I originally wanted to take this power and go live peacefully in another country. But strangely, I always kept thinking of you. After saying this, Incan pressed closer to Elena step by step. He had thought he was only desperate for revenge. Only after seeing the woman again did he understand that he had actually fallen for her. But Elena was extremely repulsed by the man's approach. The rotten smell emanating from him made her stomach churn. Incan was angered. Am I that disgusting? The Duchess is actually treating me like this? However, when he tried to get even closer to Elena, he was sent flying several meters away by a sudden burst of white energy from the woman. The woman also looked in astonishment at the hand that had just released the energy. But very quickly, Elena realized that she had to hurry and leave. Yet the moment she stepped out, she was once again blocked by Incan's followers. Elena immediately raised her palm, wanted to give him a big slap. Unexpectedly, the other party was too tall and strong, so in the end, she merely high-fived him. Immediately afterward, Elena transformed into a husky, biting wildly at the hand the man used to grab her. After that, she gave the man's little brother a vicious greeting. Only after the other party could no longer get up did Elena flee for her life. But because she did not know the exact direction, the woman ran around until she was panting and still did not see the guard squad. Suddenly, a large hand grabbed Elena's hair. The intense pain from her scalp made the woman clench her teeth. But Incan did not seem to be finished venting, so he simply dragged the woman to the ground. He had already warned the woman not to run. If you had been a little more obedient, would that not have been better for both of us? With the man tightly choking her neck, Elena felt unable to breathe. It seemed that in the next second, she would lose consciousness. Just as the woman could no longer hold on, a drop of warm blood fell onto her face. It turned out that the hero she had longed for had arrived. Her husband wore a mask every time he went out, but unexpectedly, he had not worn one this time. Just how worried had he been to rush over in such a hurry? Elena wanted very much to call her husband's name and tell him that she was fine. But for some reason, her husband's voice grew smaller and smaller, and her eyelids kept fighting to close. Before long, she closed her eyes. Strangely, when Elena opened her eyes again, she saw the old woman who had foretold the future. Everything was so real that it did not seem like a dream. Before she had fully reacted, the old woman spoke. You have already completed the first stage of awakening. Although you had already met the conditions, I did not expect a miracle to appear at this time. Elena was completely confused. What did the first stage of awakening mean? The old woman told the girl not to dwell on these things. In any case, after waking up, the girl would forget their conversation. She could only tell Elena about the fixed future. She could not reveal anything else because those are the rules. Each person's fate was created by that person. She had already interfered too much and could not continue. After speaking, she kissed the girl's forehead, hoping that the ending would change this time and that the girl could successfully prevent humanity's destruction. Only then would her child's sacrifice not have been in vain. The moment his wife encountered danger, her husband's heart almost leaped out of his throat. The woman who had always been so lively was now unconscious. Kaysen did not know when his wife would wake up. His eyes revealed worry and bitterness. Feeling the warmth from the woman's palm, scenes from the past surfaced in his mind. Since childhood, Kaysen had seen through the warmth and coldness of human relationships. He knew that the cursed markings on his face, it was destined that he could not receive his parents' love the way his younger brother did. Yet a heart that longed to be loved would always yearn for that warmth. He kept telling himself that false love was still love, as long as he did not expose his parents' lies and endured a little more painful treatment, perhaps he could gain a brief moment of warmth. But reality seemed to mock his naive foolishness. No matter how badly I burn him, he never leaves a scar. Why don't we just get rid of him? No, what if we get cursed? His parents' conversation was like a sharp blade stabbing into his heart. The beautiful illusion he had woven with all his strength collapsed. What was he still hoping for? He needed nothing at all. In his bleak and endless childhood, the only thing that stayed with him was the sword in his hand. He had resented them, but he had never thought of taking revenge on his parents. Yet in the end, his parents and younger brother all left him, and they left forever. Kaysen knew the cause of his family's deaths, but he did not want to reveal the truth to the public, because by then, he no longer cared about anything. even when it came to something as important as marriage, no matter how the other side changed the bride. To him, as long as it did not affect the transaction guarantee, anyone could be the bride. The first time he saw his wife, he thought she seemed like a little rabbit, so adorable that one could not help wanting to protect her. Kaysen believed they were merely husband and wife in name, and would have no deeper relationship. But as they spent time together, he discovered that his wife was the sort of person who became more unfathomable the more he understood her. She punished maids who gossiped, touched his face without the slightest hesitation, and even wanted to perform the duties of a married couple. At first, he thought his wife wanted her child to become the next duke, but she did not look ambitious, nor did she seem to have any plan. What was even stranger was that his wife actually put herself in danger for him. In Kaysen's dark life, it was the first time he had met someone who valued him so much. But the cowardly him used his wife's sincerity as an excuse, revealing that once new life was born, he wanted to divorce her. Because he was afraid, he unilaterally wanted to end everything. Yet his wife told him that no matter what, she would not part from him. And on that day, Kaysen learned for the first time that when people are panicked and at a loss, they can also feel anger. He did not know how to handle that emotion because no one had ever taught him. He exposed his back to his wife and told her many things from the past. Strangely, after speaking those old memories aloud, his emotions seemed to be released, and the memories no longer cut his heart like a knife. His wife did many things for him. She even became so angry over a harmless discriminatory remark that it was as if she herself had been bullied. Many times, Kaysen did not understand why his heart would suddenly beat so violently. What kind of person was his wife? Was she a good person? A miraculous person? Or someone he was grateful to? She was the beloved mistress of the Duke's mansion. But setting aside her identity as the Duchess, Kaysen had asked his own heart countless times. Did he need her? He probably did not. Losing this woman would merely mean returning to his former life. Whether in work or emotion, nothing would be affected. That was right. He did not need this woman that much. Although Kaysen reached that conclusion, for some reason, the question still lingered in his mind. Until the kidnapping happened. When everyone told him that something had happened to his wife, and the girl came to him holding the earring, Kaysen clearly felt a tremor beneath his ribs. The process of searching for his wife's whereabouts tormented him terribly. I must find her. Nothing can happen to her. Even after rescuing his wife, Kaysen was still shaken. But from that moment on, he finally understood. One should not be attached to unnecessary things. That rule, deeply rooted in his mind, now seemed so absurd. He should not have decided on his own that he did not need her. At this moment, Elena woke from her coma. But why did her husband have that expression? Kaysen, how long was I unconscious? What happened to that scumbag Incan? Faced with his wife's string of questions, Kaysen slowly spoke. Elena, didn't you ask me before whether I needed you? Then I will answer that question now, Elena. I need you, so please do not get hurt. Please stay by my side forever. Ever since Elena woke from her coma, she discovered that her husband seemed to have become a different person. Not only did he send doctors to examine her every morning, noon, and evening, but after she took her medicine, he would take the initiative to sit by the bed and peel the fruit she liked. Aside from the time he spent working every day, he basically stayed by her side. Elena helplessly wondered if this was the legendary sweet burden. Although Incan almost strangled me to death when he kidnapped me, I can understand Kaysen's worry. But I never imagined he would look so nervous and worried. I really want to tell him that a kidnapping of this level did not truly frighten me. After all, I have seen monsters devouring living people and the despair of the world's destruction. But Elena recalled the scene of her husband desperately saving her. My husband, who forgot to wear his mask, and that anxious face of his are actually what I cannot forget. The doctor's routine examination had ended. Before long, the Duke came in carrying a plate of fresh, juicy peaches. Elena watched her husband with shining eyes. After becoming a patient, she was surprised to discover that her husband was actually very good at peeling fruit. Not only that, he could even cut fruit into adorable rabbit shapes. Eating fruit meant she also had to take bitter medicine. But for the sake of such cute rabbits, Elena silently endured it. She asked her husband to choose a new fruit for her. Watching the Duke think seriously, Elena suddenly felt her hands itch. She really wanted to pat his head. Suddenly, The Duke bent down. His left hand reached toward Elena's fair cheek and gently wiped away the fruit pulp from the corner of the girl's mouth. In that instant, Elena felt as if her breathing had stopped. All done. The Duke revealed a satisfied smile. The girl's face instantly flushed bright red. Yet the Duke acted as though nothing had happened, calmly continuing to peel the fruit in his hand, while his delicate little wife's heart thumped wildly nonstop. A few days later, the butler reported that Inken's corpse had mysteriously disappeared. It turned out that after the Duke killed Inken with one strike that day, the corpse was brought back to the Duke's mansion for safekeeping. 2 days earlier, they had decided to send the corpse to the royal capital for judgment. Although Inken was already dead, the kingdom still had a punishment of beheading a corpse. This punishment would allow Inken to die once more, and his crimes could be announced to the world. But now, the corpse had vanished without a trace on the way to the royal capital. Witnesses said they personally saw the process of the corpse disappearing. According to the witnesses' testimony, Inken's corpse suddenly melted before their eyes. It disappeared. Elena found it absurd. Had the witness been drunk, that person probably had not lied. Moreover, the body disappeared, but the clothes remained. Elena could not help feeling puzzled. If this were the work of thieves, they should not have left only the clothes behind. At this moment, the butler mentioned a possibility. Inken seemed to have studied black magic while alive. Black magic could only be activated through dreadful methods, such as offering human bodies and consuming human flesh. Even merely studying it was a sin, so by now it had almost been lost. Moreover, rumors said black magic was magic that defied the will of God. All who used black magic could not return to God's embrace after death, and every trace of them would be erased from the world. So, Ben, you suspect that Inken disappeared because he studied black magic? We are not sure yet, but we will investigate. After the butler left, Elena recalled the details of the last time she saw Inken. He had indeed been somewhat strange then. Not only did he give off an inexplicable stench, he also easily knocked down several strong men. Moreover, his hands had become pitch black. Even when he looked normal, he felt extremely bizarre. She remembered that the time before last, when Inken was escorted back, he had been seriously injured by a monster and had even lost an important body part. Considering his injuries, he had recovered far too quickly. If all of this was due to the power of black magic, then what secret was hidden behind him? It turned out that Inken's corpse had been destroyed by people sent by Inken's older sister, Rebecca. When she learned that Inken had escaped the territory again, she immediately sent assassins to take his life. For this, she had even had funeral clothes prepared in advance, just waiting for this foolish younger brother to die by accident so she could attend his funeral. She simply had not expected the assassins to arrive one step too late. Inken not only kidnapped the Duchess, but was ultimately killed by the Duke himself. Now, the Duke had not only begun to suspect their family, but had also imposed an extremely severe punishment. Rebecca's father was so angry, he jumped with rage. He blamed his daughter's rotten idea, saying that forcibly confining Inken within the territory had driven him into a corner and made him act so crazily. Yet Rebecca's attitude was unusually calm. Her younger brother's death did not stir her at all. She told her agitated father to calm down. But the old baron became more worked up the more he spoke. Enough! A shout interrupted him. Please shut your mouth, father. Stop yelling. You're giving me a headache. The old baron looked at her in disbelief. What did you say? How dare you speak to me like that? Suddenly, the gemstone pendant on Rebecca's chest emitted a dazzling, eerie red-black glow. The old baron, enveloped by the light, became dull-eyed. Soon, his whole body seemed to lose its vitality, turning into a puppet at others' mercy. After dealing with her father, Rebecca turned to clean up the mess Inken had left behind. As for the kidnapped Duchess, she could only deal with her later when there was an opportunity. On the other side, Elena tried hard to recall what had been unusual the last time she saw Inken. She remembered that a light had suddenly appeared in her hand at the time. She used that hand to push Inken, and he was sent flying directly. Although it was unbelievable, she was certain that this power could contend with Inken's power. Moreover, when she faced Inken's small fry, that power had not worked. Perhaps this light only exerted its strength against Inken. Just as she was racking her brains, a young maid came forward and interrupted her, saying that the Duke had invited her to dine with him. Hearing this, Elena's eyes lit up. Quick, tell him that's fine. In the following days, Elena recuperated in the Duke's mansion while continuing to carry out the romance plan she had made. Before she knew it, she had already completed the first 5 stages. The 6th stage was to create a shared secret between the two of them. That day, she had seen the marks on her husband's body and heard the story of his childhood. Both of these could be called as secrets, so the 6th stage could be counted as complete. Next was the 7th stage. Simply repeat any of the things above. Originally, Elena wanted to invite her husband to take a walk by the lake together. But when she remembered her husband's order that she was strictly forbidden from taking even one step out of the Duke's mansion before her injuries healed, she felt like crying. Now she was like a porcelain doll, and Kaysen spent all day worrying she would bump into something or get hurt. Elena collapsed weakly onto the bed, although it was a little domineering. As soon as she thought of her husband's distressed gaze, Elena inexplicably felt her heart flutter. He said he needs me. Just as Elena obediently stayed in the Duke's mansion to recuperate, Black Tower Master Riven came to visit with a face as haggard as a dog. Brother, did you go play ghost in the middle of the night? Elena looked at him with confusion and solemnly thanked him. Fortunately, Riven had placed tracking magic on the earring at the time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Unexpectedly, Riven produced a large box filled with all kinds of magical tools. These tools had attack, defense, movement, and communication magic cast on them respectively. They would respond to the voice of the first wearer. As long as she wore them and silently thought activate, they could be used immediately. Seeing the mage in front of her explaining everything non-stop, Elena could not help asking the question she had always hidden in her heart. You didn't lose sleep just to make these things, did you? Why are you so concerned about me? Actually, I investigated you. I heard you were famous for having a terrible temper. So although you were a renowned, once-in-an-era genius, you also have a nickname, Stinking Dog Poop. But you, who are rumored to have an awful personality, act like an obedient little lamb in front of me. Whatever I ask you to do, you help me do it without a word, and you even sacrifice your sleep to make magical tools. Then Elena asked a world-shaking question. Do you like my husband that much? Riven across from her was stunned on the spot. Forget the Black Tower Master being stunned. Even I was stunned when I saw this. Girl, have you been reading too many trashy novels? Do you think every handsome man is having some passionate affair? Fortunately, Elena had not misunderstood in that way. The like she meant was the affection between friends. You have no interest in me at all. What you care about is Kaysen's wife. I know you two are friends, but I feel like your friendship is a little too deep. Elena remembered that her husband had once said Riven had originally been a priest before later becoming a mage. The two of them had met by chance and later became close friends with similar temperaments. But if that was all, then Riven's nearly loyal friendship toward Kaysen was too strange. Faced with Elena's question, Riven finally revealed the reason. It turned out that when he was still a priest, his life had not been good. It was the Duke who helped him. He allowed Riven to end his career as a priest and successfully change professions to become a mage. Seeing the dejected expression on the other person's face, Elena realized this was a scar Riven did not want to mention to others. She tactfully did not ask further. Instead, she thanked Riven even more sincerely, and before he left, she asked him about black magic. Do you know about black magic? Do black mages' bodies emit a stench? Riven carefully thought back and believed they did not. There is only one possibility for such a situation. The study of certain black magic required keeping a corpse nearby and living with it. Moreover, it had to be a corpse that had already rotted. Not only that, but the black mage had to live with the corpse for at least half a month to possibly become tainted with that smell, which would then be difficult to erase. Then is there any magic that counters black magic? I mean a magic that makes a black mage lose their strength and become completely listless even if they are only touched once. Unexpectedly, Riven answered decisively that there was not. This surprised Elena. It seemed the power she had used at the time was not a type of magic. After Riven left, Elena had dinner with her husband that evening in a rather good mood. The Duke found it strange. Why are you in such a good mood today? Well, because the Black Tower Master came by during the day. He knew about this. He had heard that his good friend had prepared many magical tools for his wife. Yes, that's exactly why. I suddenly received so many gifts, so I'm really happy. At this moment, Elena completely failed to notice her husband's mood and thought to herself, not bad. Riven is still very reliable as a friend. She turned her head and found her husband looking at her with a wronged expression. So you're in such a good mood because of Riven. Oh my, Your Grace, are you jealous? These two are really amusing. Elena thought Riven liked Kaysen, while Kaysen thought Riven liked her. Riven, the tool man, got caught in the crossfire for no reason. Fine, I'll leave, all right. A jealous duke is too terrifying. With one jab of his fork, the originally sturdy plate immediately shattered into pieces. Elena stared, dumbfounded, and hurriedly asked her husband what was wrong. Nothing. This plate seems to be of poor quality. Is that so? The silly Elena still did not know that her husband was drowning in jealousy at that moment. So the next morning, when she woke up and saw gift piled throughout the entire room, the girl was so shocked she nearly jumped out of bed. The young maid thoughtfully carried a gift box to her and proudly stated that these were all specially prepared for her by the Duke. Master said you may use all of these however you like. The girl's jaw nearly dropped. So many magical tools were enough to send her alone onto a battlefield. At this time, little Barbie brought over a letter. The letter, without beginning or end, only had one sentence written on it. You haven't forgotten me, have you? Elena was full of question marks, unable to figure out who had sent it. At this moment, the doctor who came for the examination announced that Elena had fully recovered. Her grounding order was lifted accordingly. The girl was so happy she lost herself. Yes, yes, yes. From now on, she would no longer have to sleep alone. She could sleep together again with her handsome, charming husband. But that night, after Elena lay down in bed, she discovered that she was no longer as calm as before. She secretly glanced at the husband beside her. By coincidence, her husband was looking at her at that moment. Elena took the chance to start a topic, chatting about what she had seen while going out today. I don't know how the old butler spread the rumors, but now little Anna has become a hero in everyone's hearts. I heard the children who bullied her before even sent her flowers and food. That is truly wonderful. Kaysen turned over to face Elena. Elena immediately stared straight at him. Have you been very busy lately? No, not especially busy. You're lying. I heard that aside from meal times, you spend all your time in the office. It's nothing. There are some matters to handle lately, but after those problems are resolved, things will return to normal. Then painting lessons can resume after you finish being busy. And Elena fiddled with her fingers somewhat nervously, saying rather embarrassedly, when you're not so busy, let's go boating together too. Kaysen had not expected the thing his little wife most wanted to do right now to be this. Boating? Have you ever rowed a boat? No. Then your first time boating will also be with me. Elena immediately became excited. I found a lake before. I heard it is a famous boating spot, and many lovers go there to have fun. After saying this, she shyly covered her mouth. How had she said the word lovers so naturally? In short, it will definitely be fun. I look forward to it. Me too. Seeing that her invitation plan had succeeded, the girl finally felt at ease and said goodnight. Sweet dreams, Elena. Her husband gently replied to her, then closed his eyes and prepared to sleep. But less than 2 seconds later, he heard his little wife call him again. Kaysen, are you asleep? If you don't mind, do you want to go out for a walk with me? The evening breeze was gentle. In the courtyard illuminated by moonlight, the young couple strolled leisurely. The girl smiled so happily her eyes curved, but in the next second, she accidentally tripped. Just as she was about to fall, a pair of large hands supported her. The Duke smiled gently at her. The courtyard is much darker than you imagine, so hold my hand. Elena blushed, and before she knew it, she handed her small hand to the large hand before her. Their hands clasped tightly together. Seeing her husband's gentle smile, the girl's heart had never beaten as fast as it did at this moment. Her gaze stuck tightly to her charming husband, and she could not return to her senses for a long time. Meanwhile, a carriage was traveling toward the Duke's mansion. In the carriage, a maid asked the young master somewhat anxiously, "Is this really the best method?" The man answered expressionlessly, "Besides this, is there any better way?" Then the man leaned forward and urged the coachman to go faster. Elena, wait a little longer. This time, I will definitely bring you back. In the quiet courtyard under the night sky, the young couple was walking hand in hand. Elena's heart had never pounded so wildly as it did now. Inside, she kept shouting, "Calm down, my heart. Kaysen took my hand on his own. It must only be because it's too dark here and he's afraid I'll fall. The man beside her seemed not to notice the girl's flushed face. With a gentle expression, he asked if she wanted to rest. The girl subconsciously replied, "Okay." But when her husband let go of her hand, her heart suddenly felt a wave of loss. "Can you not sleep?" "Ah, no. I just have a little insomnia today." The usually carefree girl somehow became nervous at this moment. Her husband looked at her with concern. "If you have any worries." "No, nothing is bothering me. It's just that when I see you taking care of me so much, sometimes it makes me feel like I am a porcelain doll. Even over the tiniest thing, you worry for me. That can't be helped." After all, Kaysen could not help remembering his wife's previous glorious accomplishments, and his head suddenly hurt a little. The girl pouted in dissatisfaction. "What were you going to say?" "Nothing." With a soft patter, a withered yellow leaf fell onto the girl's forehead. Kaysen gently removed it for her. But the girl suddenly had a flash of inspiration. She immediately thought of a good way to solve her insomnia. After returning to the room, Elena said enthusiastically that when she was little, every time she cried and could not sleep, her parents would tell her ancient fairy tales to coax her. "But I'm grown up now, so I don't want to hear fairy tales. I want to hear your stories." "My stories?" As long as they are things from your past that I do not know, I want to hear them. For example, the story of how you subjugated monsters and how you saved little Anna and little Hans. But those things are very boring." "That's fine. That would actually be even better. If the story is boring, I will definitely fall asleep after listening for a while." Of course, compared to stories, the girl actually wanted to hear her husband sing her a lullaby. In the end, the Duke could not resist his little wife's request and began to tell his own story in a serious, proper manner. Sure enough, before long, Elena fell asleep amid her husband's reassuring voice. Noticing that his little wife beside him had fallen peacefully asleep, Kaysen stared intently at his wife's face for a while. "After you came back, someone appeared by my side. I had never interacted with anyone so small and fragile before. So it is inevitable that I am especially careful when taking care of a lady, because I do not want you to get hurt, Elena." Early the next morning, the Duke summoned the old butler and instructed him to complete the acquisition of the merchant guild as soon as possible. He also told the butler to inform the maids not to wake Madame this morning. He wanted his little wife to sleep until she woke naturally. It was precisely because of this considered action that after Elena woke up, she felt refreshed and extremely comfortable all over. She happily stretched. It seemed listening to her husband's stories was effective. From now on, she had to make him tell her stories before bed every night. At this moment, the old butler came to report that an honored guest had arrived at the Duke's mansion. At this moment, Elena never would have expected that the honored guest visiting her was actually her older brother. Moreover, her brother was standing beside the carriage with a displeased expression. With a gloomy face, he said, "Elena, your brother personally came to pick you up. I have come to take you home. After receiving your letter, the whole family held a meeting. We have been considering whether to bring you home for your safety. After several days of careful thought, Father also agreed to bring you back. So stop wasting time. Pack your luggage and come with us." Elena looked at her emotional brother and only felt a headache. "So, you mean you wanted to end my current marriage and return home forever?" "That's right. Can you say something reliable?" "I am not going back with you." Elena refused decisively. Ed remained insistent. He firmly believed that Elena had been kidnapped because the Duke's mansion's protection was inadequate. "Do you know where the kidnapper came from?" "He came from the capital. So this was not the Duke's mansion's problem at all." As Elena explained, she told the maids to bring out all her magical tools. "See, these magical tools are enough to rival an army. And these 3 powerful personal bodyguards. What are you still worried about?" Ed was clearly somewhat persuaded, but he stubbornly said, "I don't believe it. Dear brother, I know you truly worry about me, but you can see that I am very safe in the Duke's mansion. So I will not go home, and there is no need for me to. I will arrange a room for you later. Since you rarely come here, rest well first." Elena had just breathed a sigh of relief. but who knew Ed still would not give up. He even claimed that what Elena suffered was related to the curse on the Duke. Elena was so angry that she slammed the table on the spot. When outsiders spoke of her husband that way, she had already hated them enough to remember every single one in her little notebook. Now even her own brother was saying it. Just as Elena was about to explode on the spot, a gentle male voice sounded. So you were here. Hearing that an honored guest had come to visit, Kaysen had come over to greet them. Kaysen walked over with a smile, as if he had not heard Ed's slander just now. I wonder if I'm disturbing you too. No, you don't need to greet him. In any case, he will be leaving soon. Elena cheerfully made the decision for her own brother. The Duke stepped forward and came before his brother-in-law. It has been a long time, Edward Solte. Have you been well recently? The Duke extended his hand. Then his brother-in-law gripped it with all his strength, as if trying to crush it. There was no need to imagine the result. How could the weak brother-in-law compete with the sister's husband, who had wielded swords for years? His face turned red, while Kaysen still looked calm and composed. Then Kaysen casually instructed, "The room for my brother-in-law has already been prepared. Ben, take our guest there." Ed, who had been bested, was instantly confused. "No, you do not need to entertain me. I am here to take Elena home." That evening, Elena looked at her husband with a serious face. "You did that on purpose today, didn't you? What are you referring to? I was just about to get angry at Ed, and then you came in. That wasn't a coincidence, was it?" Kaysen lowered his eyes, hiding the complicated look in them, and nodded. "Yes. Why did you do that? If you hadn't come in, I would have pulled out half of Ed's hair on the spot. I would simply have made him bald for the rest of his life." Elena had truly been angered today, but in the next second, her clenched fist was held by a large hand. "The reason I went in was because I was afraid you would do that, because I do not want you to quarrel with your family because of me. That is why I interfered. I wasn't trying to quarrel with him." Elena suddenly felt a little guilty. "I only wanted to punish him on behalf of the moon." The Duke felt a wave of surprise in his heart. Looking at his little wife, who was wholeheartedly thinking of him, he could not help revealing a happy smile. "It's all right, Elena. As long as those words do not come from you, I will not mind them. So you do not need to take them to heart." Elena felt a twisting pain in her heart. How could he be like this? Her husband was always so kind. That was right. Even when Thomas had made such outrageous remarks before, hadn't Kaysen also not taken it to heart? Was it because he had already given up hope? The more Elena thought about it, the angrier she became. In her heart, she fiercely marked down another grudge against Ed. She grabbed her husband's hand, lay down, and spent the whole night telling her husband how Ed had bullied her in the past. The next day, when she saw Ed again, Elena very seriously warned him that if he still wanted to be her family, he was not allowed to mention the rumors about her husband's curse again. Ed looked at his sister's serious expression. He meekly agreed. "Fine, but are you really not planning to go home? Didn't I say yesterday? I'm not going back." Elena frowned and waved her hand. "If you're worried about the contract. Speaking of this, Elena remembered that she had originally married the Duke in her cousin's place. "So, Miel has already agreed to marry the Duke in my place?" "That's right." After careful consideration, she felt that you sacrificed yourself to take her place. After listening, Elena only found it ridiculous. What kind of house-playing game was this? Could they swap in another wife halfway through? In short, Ed remained extremely insistent on having Elena return to her maiden home. Elena still refused with two big words. Thus, the siblings remained at a stalemate for several days, and Ed also stayed in the Duke's mansion for several days. Until this day, Ed called Elena aside, saying he wanted to have a proper talk with her. "Although you have a bad temper, you have no ambition. You have never demanded anything, nor complained about anything. You have never coveted anything either. But a few months ago, you, of all people, became stubborn for the first time and wanted to do something. You did not discuss it with the family beforehand. You acted on your own and even did not hesitate to lie." Hearing this, Elena's eyes could not help freezing. "You said you married Duke Mehar to Miel's place because you love him. Wasn't what you said a lie? Elena, we were born of the same mother. We grew up under the same roof since childhood. Do you think we cannot even tell whether you are lying?" At that time, everyone in the family could tell that you were lying. Of course, judging by the current situation, it seems it was not entirely a lie. But father agreed to this marriage because of your insistence back then. When he received the letter saying you had been kidnapped, he was both regretful and blaming himself. Elena remembered that her old father was still worrying about her from afar, and she could not help feeling guilty. "I understand now that the place you are in is very safe, but but I still hope you can personally meet Father. After seeing him, convince him with your own words and put his mind at ease. That would be better than having me convey it for you. Do you understand? I hope you will agree. Please." Unexpectedly, that night, the Duke smiled gently and said, "It would be better for you to go back once. Since getting married, you have not seen your family even once. Taking this chance to go back and stay for a while is not bad. Moreover, I'm also afraid your family will hate me because I will not let you return. So what if they hate you? You're not family with them anyway." "That is true. I'm not family with them. But for some reason, I want the people who love you deeply to look favorably upon me." The next day, Kaysen called over his good friend Riven, who cast a huge magic circle and teleported his little wife and the others back to her maiden home. Elena originally did not want to bring those 3 personal bodyguards, but the 3 handsome men insisted on following to broaden their horizons. Elena proudly showed off in front of Ed. "See, my husband's friend is so powerful, teleporting so many people to the capital at once. Not just anyone can do that." In the end, when the young couple parted, Elena looked at her husband reluctantly, thinking that for several days she would not be able to see this gentle and affectionate man. She rushed forward in one step. Under everyone's jaw-dropping gazes, she held Kaysen's face and kissed him. Completely ignoring the man-eating expression of her brother behind her, she waved goodbye. As for the Duke who had been kissed, he covered the kissed cheek with his hand, still immersed in the happiness from just now, unable to come back to his senses for a long time. The magic circle sent Elena and the others directly to the capital. As soon as her eldest sister from her maiden family saw her little sister, she excitedly pulled her into her arms and hugged her tightly. Elena warmly greeted her family. As a result, the servants and the family all looked eagerly at the men following behind Elena. "Did you see? Who is that? I think he's a mage. He's so handsome, like a prince. And those knights look pretty good too." Elena scratched her head in confusion. What was going on? These guys were actually quite popular. Elena finally saw her handsome old father again. When she walked into the room, a warm atmosphere rushed toward her. "Why did you light the fireplace?" "When I heard you were coming, I remembered. Ever since you were little, you especially liked fireplaces. You are very much like your mother in how afraid of the cold you are. You resemble her the most, so whenever I see you, I often think of her. Perhaps this is also why I am overly protective of you alone." "Father." "Elena, do you still remember what your sister said to you on the day of your wedding? She said that as long as you wanted, you could come home at any time." "Yes, I still remember. I want to tell you that those words were sincere. You do not need to consider conditions, nor must you worry about your circumstances or the environment around you. You only need to care about what is in your heart. So if you want to come back, you may do so at any time. The door of our home will always be open for you. It is enough as long as you understand this." Listening to her old father's heartfelt concern and love, Elena was so moved she could not speak. "All right, father." Elena returned to her maiden home and was rarely reunited with her dear family. That night, she happily drank a few extra cups. Ed helplessly snatched her cup away, afraid that this silly sister would get drunk and cause a scene. Her sister smiled and suggested that she go to the courtyard to get some fresh air. At this time, the 3 guards, who were also drunk, swayed unsteadily and said they would stay by Elena's side to protect her. Elena was covered in black lines watching them. "No need. I can go by myself." Under the gentle moonlight, Elena sat in the courtyard and enjoyed the night breeze for a while, feeling her mind become much clearer. The girl closed her eyes and enjoyed the gusts of wind, but her mouth suddenly called out, "Ed, how long are you going to keep hiding?" Ed walked out from behind her, a little displeasure on his face. "How did you know it was me? I just somehow felt it would be you." Elena sat up, her face carrying an intoxicating rosy glow. "What do you think?" "What do I think of what?" "I mean my husband. Tell me honestly, does he look like a good person? Aren't you good at judging people?" What answered her was her brother rolling his eyes. "You're already drunk. What am I supposed to say to you?" Ed sighed, but in his mind he recalled the scene from earlier when he had gone to find Kaysen. At the time, he had privately sought Kaysen out and asked why Kaysen had not driven him away. Yet Kaysen's answer had been beyond his expectations. Kaysen did not care at all what anyone thought of him, including this brother-in-law of his. The reason he had not driven Ed away was because Ed's starting point had been entirely for Elena's sake. "The reason I am receiving you as a guest is because, as her brother, you truly are thinking of my wife." The Duke looked at him with cold eyes. as though he were merely speaking to a stranger. Even after Ed learned that the Duke genuinely loved his younger sister, he still felt displeased. I'm still not sure whether he's a good person, but I think he should be able to become a good husband to you. Hearing her husband receive her family's approval for the first time, Elena immediately smiled so widely she could not close her mouth. Meanwhile, Riven was carrying an oil lamp and inspecting the barrier everywhere when her older sister Lily called out to him. Riven was completely baffled because what Lily had just called was Rivy. He did not react at all and had not realized she was calling his name. Because your name is Sid Riven, that makes you Rivy. No, why had she suddenly called him over and even given him such a strange nickname? Riven was still confused when, in the next moment, he saw Lily actually trying to climb out the window and jump down. Riven was so frightened that he hurried over and steadied Lily. It turned out that Lily was also extremely happy tonight. Since childhood, she had doted on her younger sister. But one day, her younger sister had suddenly come to the family and said she was getting married, yet refused to tell them the real reason. What on earth had she been thinking? What exactly had she wanted to shoulder with that frail body of hers? As her sister, Lily felt both heartbroken and helpless. Riven was also surprised by this. After all, what he had learned was that the two had married in order to facilitate a business deal. Although I did not know the details, when the Duchess was in the Duke's castle, she looked very happy. Even though they have not known each other for long, they get along very harmoniously. They rely on each other, almost as if it were destined. Riven had always felt that the meeting between those two was extremely unbelievable. So she really is happy. That is wonderful. Thank you. Her worried sister finally felt relieved. Then her tone changed, and she turned the topic to Riven. You are a very good person. You really are very kind. Not only are you friendly, you are gentle and handsome too. As the young woman spoke, she actually lowered her head and fell asleep. The helpless mage looked melancholy, but he could not leave her here alone. So he picked her up in his arms and personally escorted her back to her room. The next day, when Elena happened to run into her usually fierce older sister, speaking to her mage like a shy young girl, she was stunned for 5 whole seconds. Then she asked Riven, "What is going on between you two?" Riven helplessly told her what had happened the night before. In the end, he had carried Lily, asked a servant for directions, and sent her back to her bedroom. I thought there could not be a title more shocking than Black Tower Master. What? The mage looked at the somewhat fierce young woman with amusement in his eyes. You really are all from the same family. I have truly broadened my horizons. Then, under the young woman's confused gaze, he turned and left. After returning to her maiden home, Elena also went to visit her cousin. Fortunately, what her cousin had previously said about staying in the Duke's castle in her place had only been words spoken in anger. She had quarreled with her boyfriend, and in a fit of anger had agreed to switch back with Elena. Such an absurd request. Elena finally breathed a sigh of relief. At the dining table, her uncle sincerely thanked Elena for wronging herself and taking his daughter's place. Uncle, I should be the one thanking you. Thanks to you, I was able to live happily in marriage with a husband I love. I truly thank you. Her uncle widened his eyes in surprise. Then, the heart that had been hanging in suspense finally settled. Originally, he had been worried that his niece had married into such a faraway place. Now it seemed that not only was his niece doing well, she was also very happy. When the two had married, the agreement had been to give her uncle a mine. Excavating relics had always been her uncle's dream. Recently, we unearthed a relic in the mine. Judging from its shape, it should be a weapon. Are you interested in going to have a look? No, I will not go. Elena was not interested in weapon-type relics, so she smiled and tactfully declined. After leaving her uncle's house, Elena took Riven and 3 guards out shopping, preparing to go to the egg tart shop she often visited to buy some egg tarts. Unexpectedly, they happened to run into a temple carriage blocking the road ahead. One of their carriage wheels had fallen off, and they were repairing it. However, because they lacked manpower, it was difficult to fix. Elena was just about to call her 3 bodyguards over to help, but Riven beside her spoke in a colder tone. As long as we move the carriage away, can we not pass through here? Madam, before Elena could respond, under everyone's shocked gazes, he directly used magic. and floated the carriage in front of them into the air. "What are you doing?" The temple personnel turned pale with fright. "Is the reason you have encountered such a situation not because you despise the servants as dirty and are unwilling to ride in the same carriage with them? To avoid this sort of thing from happening, you should have chosen to ride in the carriage with your servants from the very beginning. I hope you will learn a lesson from this matter." Not long after the carriage passed through, Elena stared fixedly at Riven. "Do you know that person for just now?" "I know him, but we're not close." Elena returned home with a stomach full of questions. That night, she saw Riven standing alone by the window, seemingly thinking about something. "Black Tower Master, what are you doing here?" "I'm just thinking about something." "Thinking about what?" "I'm thinking about Kason." The young woman who received that answer quickly grew angry, her gaze turning wary. At that moment, Riven turned around and looked at her with a serious expression. "Do you know how Kason and I met?" The temple, which appeared holy and was loved by the people on the surface, was doing things behind the scenes that could hardly be called human. Riven was an orphan who had wandered the streets since childhood. Just when he was about to starve to death, he happened to encounter a priest from the temple and was taken back there. But the days afterward were not as beautiful as he had imagined. The temple used Riven's holy-looking appearance to turn him into a beautiful fraud. A heartbroken mother would pray to the temple, asking them to bless her son and let him recover. Even knowing full well that her son was beyond saving, Riven still had to go against his conscience and tell her that the temple could bless the child and keep him safe. Afterward, the mother would donate a large sum of money to the temple. Riven did not want to do that sort of deceitful thing, but every time he resisted, the priest would lock him in solitary confinement for 3 days. After that, whenever I complained that I could not do it, he would lock me up. Each time, it would be for several days, and they would not even give me a sip of water. Until 2 years later, when I met Kason. At that time, the temple's status had already declined greatly. There were no droughts or disasters, and no need to offer sacrifices to the gods. Among the nobles, some people had begun to question the temple's purpose. In order to solidify the temple's position, the priests came up with another vicious scheme. They turned their eyes to the Duke, attempting to use the markings on his face to prove that the so-called demon's curse truly existed. Then they would hold a grand exorcism ceremony to prove that the temple was of great importance. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not find any connection between the markings and demons. At that point, the priest came up with an even more ruthless move, fabricating something out of thin air. If there was no evidence, they would create some. "Wait," Elena angrily called for a pause, then turned and ran off to bring back a pot of tea. If she did not drink a few mouthfuls of tea to calm herself down, she was afraid she would be unable to stop herself from charging into the temple to settle accounts with them. Seeing his friend's wife defend his friend like this, Riven could not help revealing a warm smile. At that time, the task the temple gave me was to stay by Duke Mayhard's side and find suspicious points as much as possible. If I truly could not find any, then I was to make him injure himself in front of everyone. Once he was hurt under the eyes of the public, the temple would personally treat the wound to make it look as if it had been caused by demonic power. But the instant I saw Kason, a thought suddenly surged into my mind. For a moment, I forgot my original mission. At the time, I thought if only those markings cursed by a demon had grown on me instead. Anyway, it is not as if my luck could get much worse. I wore this white priest's robe and spent every day relying on trickery and fraud to collect money for the temple. If I did not do it, the temple would lock me in solitary confinement and starve me for days and nights. Do you know what it feels like to scream until your throat is torn and still have no one answer? You are different from me. You're not an orphan. You certainly do not know what that feels like. The reason people are interested in your markings is actually all because of your bloodline and status. For someone of unknown birth like me, even if flowers grew on my face, no one would care. If your markings had grown on me instead, perhaps I would not have become a priest like I am now. And you probably would not have been stuck with me, investigated by me for evidence of a curse. At that point, Kason suddenly stopped walking, turned around, and asked, "You can use magic, right? Although you have kept it hidden all along, you actually know how to use magic, correct? In that case, why do you not leave the temple?" "What are you saying?" "I'm asking you why you do not resign from your position as a priest." The man's question struck directly at the young man's heart. Riven furrowed his brows tightly and stated the reason. In the high priest's room inside the temple, there is a register. Only by erasing my name from it can I take off this priestly robe, but I am forbidden from entering that place. Then just break in. The white-haired young man fell silent. On Kaysen's youthful face appeared a trace of melancholy. So you cannot bring yourself to do it. I can understand. After all, I was the same in the past. But I do not know when it began. My family's life or death became irrelevant to me. And when they truly died, I felt nothing. Even so, I still could not personally kill them. Afterward, his tone changed, and he asked Riven what he wanted to do if he could leave the temple. Riven blurted out that he wanted to do something related to magic, then immediately denied it halfway through, saying he had never thought about that question. Kaysen stared fixedly at him, then revealed an amused smile. As a result, the next day, he directly tossed Riven a thick book. When Riven opened it, he discovered that it was actually the register with his name written inside. Riven was dumbfounded. Kaysen had really gotten a register, and he had only used a single short day. Whether you burn the entire register or only erase your own name, decide for yourself. It was said that that night, half of the temple's interior was destroyed. The young woman listened with her mouth agape, never expecting that her husband in his youth had been so heroic. Only later did I learn that he had taken just 1 hour from start to finish. He had infiltrated alone, defeated all the knights, and even broken the high priest's barrier. The temple did not pursue the matter. After all, letting others know that the temple had been breached by Kaysen alone was not a good thing. Moreover, it was the temple that had tried to provoke Kaysen first. Unless they silenced me, they would inevitably have to explain the matter. Afterward, Riven had wanted to repay the Duke. In the end, the Duke had told him, "You do not need to do anything. Just do what you want to do." After gaining my freedom, I was taken in as a disciple by the Black Tower Master of the time, and 1 year later, I became the new Black Tower Master. I often think, if Kaysen had not stepped forward for me back then, what would my fate have been? Perhaps I would have continued to be enslaved by the temple until I was driven mad, then accidentally killed a few people and lived life on the run. After listening to everything Riven told her, Elena made a decision in her heart. So, early the next morning, she took the account book she had stayed up all night making and ran to the temple to collect a debt. Hand over every donation that has been given to the temple in my name up to now. Every single one of them. Riven was rather stunned by her action. You came to the temple just for money? Yes. I do not quite understand why. What is there not to understand? If I do not vent this anger, I fear I will faint from rage. The priest receiving them happened to be the one whose carriage had broken down yesterday. Elena gave him no good expression at all. She directly told them to return every last coin of the donations she had made over the years. The priest gave a polite, fake smile. May I ask the reason? Allow me also to remind you that the temple does not accept irrational personal refund requests, especially in situations where someone has lost trust in the temple after listening to another person's slander. The priest looked meaningfully at Riven. What he said next was even more shocking. He directly convicted the Duke, saying that the markings on his face came from a demon's curse. Riven was so anxious he wanted to refute him, but Elena stopped him with unusual calm and let the priest finish speaking. The priest thought his words had intimidated Elena and continued speaking shamelessly, saying that the markings on the Duke's face were almost identical to the patterns of ancient demons. I heard they were only similar, not completely identical. The similarity in the patterns itself is very problematic. Those slight differences are not important. The priest revealed a sinister grin. Unexpectedly, the young woman immediately turned his words against him. I already expected you to say that. Then the young woman threw out an ancient-looking book. Do you see the pattern on it? This is the pattern carved when sacrifices were offered to ancient demons. And the pillars at the temple entrance are also carved with the exact same pattern. After seeing the pattern, the priest could no longer sit still. Sweating all over in panic, he refuted her. Although the two are very similar, if you look closely, there are still differences. The similarity in the patterns itself is very problematic. As for those slight differences, they are not important. Is that not what you said, Priest Bida? In the end, under the young woman's clever scheme, the two successfully recovered all the donations. After walking out of the temple, Elena smiled so widely she could not close her mouth. As long as she thought of the temple's pained expression when they returned the money earlier, she felt physically and mentally refreshed. In such a good mood, she could eat 2 extra bowls of rice. Only Riven noticed that the key point of the matter was that so-called pattern for sacrificing to demons. How had Elena known about it? The young woman, exhausted yet full of energy, said that in order to find a similar pattern, she had flipped through more than 100 books overnight. It had indeed taken quite a lot of time. Then how do you plan to handle this money? Elena had not thought it through and jokingly said, "How about I give this money to you?" But Riven did not want it. Looking at the money the temple had obtained through deception, he felt disgusted. Just then, they happened to reach the adorable guards. Elena tossed the heavy bag of gold coins to Thomas. At this moment, she already had a good idea in mind. Using this money to make armor for the knights of the Duke's castle, or to purchase a pile of training consumables for them, seemed rather good as well. When they left the temple, an old priest with a head full of white hair chased after them. Elena thought the temple had changed its mind and wanted to send people to retrieve the gold coins. She hurriedly told her people to run off quickly. On the other side, Priest Daika cursed his bad luck and anger while ordering people to move the donation records away and burn the account books. The high priest who had just chased after them found them and hurriedly asked who the person who had just left was. "What is wrong with you?" "I sense holy power." That power matched the descriptions in the records completely. "I am certain that was a holy force." The high priest suddenly became excited. "This is the first person with holy power to appear after 200, no, nearly 300 years. No matter what, we must seize that person. Whether as a saintess or a holy son, we must elevate that person." "High priest, I do not understand what you are saying. You must have mistaken something. Are you saying I made a mistake?" "Yes, it must be that you made a mistake." "What do you mean by that? Did you not ask who the person who just left the temple was?" "That was Duchess Mayhard." "What?" The high priest's face was full of disbelief, but deep down he still preserved a trace of hope. Unexpectedly, Bida directly shattered his beautiful dream. "Do you know what that lady came to the temple for today? She asked me whether I felt even the slightest remorse over the test of courage from 7 years ago. So she absolutely will not join hands with our temple. If she truly has obtained holy power, perhaps she will even establish a new religious order of her own. And she came here together with Riven. You should stop wasting your effort thinking about it. Holy power could be of great use in the past, but the present is not the same as before. Nowadays, the sick can be treated through medicine, and there are no longer evil things on this land that need to be eliminated. So even if holy power has revived, what use is it? It is impossible for it to help the temple recreate its former glory. Meanwhile, at the Marlison family, ever since Rebecca Marlison had used a mysterious power to control her father last time, even though she had not used it many times, the old father had directly become a senile fool. Rebecca only felt a headache. She had originally disguised the mess left behind by her foolish younger brother, as if they were the victims. Unexpectedly, the Duke did not believe them at all. Not only had he cut off their funding chain, he had even acquired the family's debts. Once the creditors came knocking in the future, the family would step by step head toward decline. The woman turned and left. Walking into a pitch-black basement, she summoned a man named Mikkel. The man's eyes were hollow and lifeless, exactly the same as her old father's had looked when he was controlled. She ordered the man to go to the capital and closely watch the Duchess's every move, reporting to her at any time. Then she walked into a pitch-black room. On the floor of the room was a huge, mysterious magic circle. A piece of parchment was placed on top of it, recording how to use the magic circle. It turned out that this formation was called an otherworld summoning circle. When it summoned a living creature, the situation would become extremely dangerous, and the cancellation spell recorded there had to be used to send it back immediately. If it summoned a dead object, its corpse and blood could be used. Next came the effects of the blood and how to use it. After reading the magic circle's instructions, Rebecca was wild with joy. She distributed the blood she had obtained to her subordinates for experiments. She discovered that the blood could actually allow people to gain power. Relying on this miraculous thing, she rapidly cultivated her own forces. But before long, this secret was discovered by her younger brother. She did not panic either. Instead, she dripped her younger brother's blood onto the magic circle and discovered that the blood of the dead thing summoned could allow female creatures to conceive without insemination. What she had not expected was that her younger brother would be so useless. He had been discovered by the Duchess, and in the end was even killed by the Duke, arousing the Duke's suspicion. In order to stop the Duke from continuing his investigation, Rebecca made up her mind. She planned to kidnap the Duchess first, then use the Duchess to eliminate the Duke. She picked up the strange blood-soaked necklace on her chest and revealed an amused smile. A monster dying for love also seems rather nice. Meanwhile, Elena, who had just returned home after collecting the debt from the temple, shared this good news with her family. She had not expected that not only did her family not blame her, they raised both hands in support. Elena's heart felt warm. Father, I love you. Sister, I love you. Brother, I suppose I love you too. His younger sister's world-changing declaration of love made Ed explode on the spot. Early the next morning, a young woman's piercing scream rang out through the castle. It turned out that Elena had finally realized that when she had gotten married, she had borrowed the temple's venue. As soon as she thought that her husband must have been extremely displeased at the time, she felt that it had been simply the worst wedding. The young woman suddenly had a flash of inspiration. If only they could hold it again. That was right. They could simply hold it again. I'm going to hold my own wedding again. Who could possibly object? Just as she was enthusiastically planning the new wedding, her older sister suddenly arrived and interrupted her, wanting to invite her out on a shopping date. We sisters have not gone shopping together in a long time. Since you have finally come back, accompany me out for some fun. As it turned out, when her older sister went out the door, she exchanged a subtle look with Ed outside. At the time, the Duke would descend upon the clothing shop and amaze his little wife. But before the Duke had even arrived, just as Elena was trying on the 99th dress, a masked man suddenly walked out of the fitting room. That man ignored the scolding of the women around him and walked straight up to Elena. Elena looked at him with confusion. You are. The man's face was calm. Duchess, we can exchange greetings later. Please come with me first. Then, before everyone could react, the ruby necklace on his chest suddenly burst with a strange red light. The man before her abruptly became sinister and terrifying. Do not make any sound. Just quietly come with me. At that moment, Elena discovered in horror that the people around her had suddenly stopped moving, as if time had frozen. At the same time, an enormous stench came from the man's body. The man was stunned by Elena's reaction. In the instant when he was dazed, Elena immediately remembered the magic tool on her body. She promptly chanted the spell, Gale. A tremendous gust of wind rose from flat ground, blowing away every object around Elena. The loud noise drew the attention of the guards outside. The 3 guards immediately broke through the door. Madam, are you all right? Only when they saw that Elena was unharmed did they breathe a sigh of relief. At that moment, everyone discovered the man lying on the ground. His wig and mask had been blown off by the gale, revealing long black hair and a soft, beautiful face. Elena looked at the woman collapsed on the ground and only felt that she was inexplicably familiar. She was just about to step forward and confirm it, when the woman suddenly turned her head and stared fixedly at her. She shouted loudly, "That is impossible!" At the same time, she activated the necklace on her chest and once again unleashed an illusion. Elena could not help closing her eyes under the stimulation of that red light. When she opened them again, she found that the people around her had stopped moving once more. What frightened her even more was that her older sister seemed to be controlled, walking step by step toward Rebecca. Elena desperately shouted for her sister not to go over, but her sister was like a puppet. She walked in front of Rebecca and became a hostage in her hands. At this time, Rebecca had already put her mask back on. She held a dagger in her hand, pressing it before Elena's sister, yet her face still showed disbelief. How could this be? How could it be useless? Who exactly are you? Elena looked at her angrily. What exactly do you want from me? At this moment, Rebecca only felt that it was unbelievable. She had clearly controlled everyone just now. Why did the necklace's power have no effect on Elena? Was the Duke not the only one who was unaffected? After thinking it over several times, Rebecca's face darkened. She told Elena to remove all the magic tools on her body first. Elena was forced to comply. But just as she threw those tools down, a hand suddenly reached out from the side and fiercely grabbed her throat, lifting her up. She opened her eyes and discovered in horror that the person choking her was actually the controlled guard Max. Max's hand was trembling slightly. It turned out that he was desperately resisting as well. Taking advantage of the instant his hand loosened, Elena whispered softly, "Sir Max, obey my command. Let go now." In the next second, Elena slid down from the wall with her eyes tightly shut. Rebecca thought Elena was dead and was just about to go up to finish her off. Elena abruptly grabbed her borehundet. Ignoring the sharp pain of the blade cutting her palm, she snatched the dagger away and flung it aside. Then she quickly swung her fist at Rebecca. Sensing Elena's attempt to escape, Rebecca suddenly shouted, "Catch that woman!" Mikkel appeared from who knew where and jumped out. But he was blocked by Thomas, who had just happened to wake up. "Madam, are you all right?" He quickly swung his sword and fought Mikkel. However, Mikkel was far too strong. In only a few moves, Thomas was thrown aside. Elena cried out his name in worry. "I originally wanted to act quietly, but there is no need now. Kill them all. Leave only the Duchess alive. Kill everyone else." Rebecca had lost her patience and furiously issued the order to Mikkel. Mikkel was like a merciless machine beginning a massacre inside the shop. Everyone woke up at this moment. The two guards immediately stood in front of Elena. Her sister pulled her into her arms. "Elena, are you all right?" But Mikkel was too powerful. The three guards were no match for him. Seeing that they had all fallen, Elena prepared to use the magic tools on her body, only to discover in horror that she could not find Michael's figure anywhere. Little did she know, the man was now standing right behind her. Just as he was preparing to move, he suddenly stopped and looked down. Colin was clinging tightly to his right leg, refusing to let him take even one more step forward. "You cannot hurt, madam." But how could the merciless man possibly care about Nat? He swung his sword coldly, and a string of blood splashed across the ground. "Colin!" Elena screamed in grief. But Mikkel suddenly reacted and dodged aside, evading a massive strike from the roof. Elena looked in disbelief at the man who appeared before her. It was none other than the Duke they had been waiting several episodes for. Her brother Ed looked anxiously at his two younger sisters. Even the mage, who was always calm, was now full of shock. Without another word, the Duke swung his sword head-on against the assassin Mikkel. The man who had just been slaughtering everyone in all directions was completely unable to withstand a single blow before the Duke. In just a few moves, the sword in his hand was knocked away. Mikkel looked at his empty palm, seemingly not understanding how he had lost. The Duke did not give him chance. He swung his sword once more and advanced, preparing to end his life. Only then did Mikkel react. He quickly glanced at Elena. Then he pulled a dagger from his chest and threw it at her with all his strength. With a clang, the Duke swiftly moved in front of his little wife and knocked the dagger down. Mikkel took the opportunity to pick up Rebecca and jump out the window to escape. "Do not let him run," Riven shouted, emitting a burst of blue light. Unfortunately, he was still one step too late. Mikkel had escaped with Rebecca without a trace. Only then did Elena kneel on the ground, as if all her strength had been drained. Kaysen hurriedly supported her and asked worriedly, "Are you all right?" Elena's expression was somewhat dazed. "Why are you here?" Kaysen picked her up in his arms. "We will go back and treat your wound first. Then I will tell you." Wound. After surviving the disaster, Elena's mind was still muddled. She only saw that her right hand was bleeding nonstop, and that her husband was looking at her with worry all over his face. Right? That was right. She was injured, and that woman really had looked so familiar. Who exactly was she? Before she could finish thinking everything through, the young woman slowly closed her eyes and sank into darkness.